Hi everybody. All right, we're gonna paint some Christmas stuff. Christmas card. After we do a 5-minute thumbnail redeem. Okay, that's my intro. That's how I start the stream. Hope everyone's doing well. And yeah, let's start the timer. We got a 5-minute thumbnail redeem. I had forgotten to start the VOD, which is good because I just went on a rant about something that probably is completely unart related. Oh boy, the stream just now started. It did! The stream just now started, Skittle. How's it going? Hope you're doing well. Alright, let's bring up this countdown timer in the bottom. We're going to start with a good warm-up 5-minute thumbnail. You know, we can even just delete that and that. Wait, what did that do? Okay, I don't know what any of these are. Okay, let's lock this layer real quick. So I just remade the grid here. I'm gonna do some vertical paintings instead of our normal horizontal paintings. That's why I did that. So let's lock this and change the color. We'll make it a green, just so I don't click it. Red and green, that way it's Christmassy themed or colors. All right, we will start once I figure out where the timer is. Here it is. Resume. All right, and let's minimize that so I don't see it. There we go. All right. I mean, I guess just standard snow scenes are. I actually like to start with just like a bunch of blue, and then typically you can. I like to start sort of the way I would normally start a scene. Like foreground can be dark, you know, background can be light, but then I like to go in and treat this material right here as like think of it as like a dirt, right? It's dark. The dark dirt in the shadow, you know, up close it's almost black in some cases. Far away it's maybe a little lighter because you have atmospheric perspective, but because we're going to do a snowy scene, you can then take another color. Let's say maybe there's another color. I'm just going to make patterns here. This is going to be just random stuff. And this back here will be nice and bright, right? It's not going to be this, but it's going to be significantly brighter in each of these, right? So now that can be the snow, right? So now we still have our dark dirt, we have our lighter color, but this is still darker than this, right? Or at least it's almost the same. But anyway, it's supposed to be darker. And that way you still have atmospheric perspective, right? Your shadow, this is shadow color still. It's still darker as it goes back. And then that way, this is still all in shadow, right? This is snow in shadow. And now if we wanted to add snow and light, we could do the same thing again, where we make different shapes, right? Maybe there's a patch of snow here, or maybe a patch of light, I mean. And then we could do something like I think a hard light would work. I don't actually know. I don't really use soft and hard light, but I imagine one of those would do just fine. Could be on snow, or color dodge. You know, we could also do like a glow dodge or something where you get some light. Hey, hello, Initial! How's it going? Right, so we could get some snow in there like that, and that would be like the snow in the light, which, you know, is white. And so, yeah, we could do something like that. And, of course, whoops, we could also get some bright sky, or brighter sky. We want to really make it... Actually, let's do the opposite. Let's go right down here. There. That's snowy. Now that doesn't look good, right? We have 2 minutes left. But now we can take this and we can start, you know, deciding what these things are, right? Because we already have, like, if we had I don't know, a lamp post, right? We could have that, and then this would be snow on top. Maybe there's a little bit of light, right? So anyway, stuff like that. We could put things there. We could make shapes. Could do like a big tower, be like our towers. I might actually do a tower. I don't know. I have a plan, but I don't. Well, I guess I can say the plan. No one's So I did a, well, no, I'm not gonna say it. I got a plan of something I want to do, but I'm not gonna say it because I know if I say it, I'll never do it. But anyway, yeah, I'm gonna paint a tower. For now. Maybe a tower. Maybe the shapes are smaller. Maybe there's little houses. Maybe these are maybe it's massive. Maybe these are like giant villages. We got a minute left to carve some simple shapes. But yeah, initial good evening. Hope you're doing well today. All right, I think we're starting strong here. Maybe this could also be snowy. Bring it in there. I don't know if I like that shape right there, but that'll work. Try to use big shapes here. Big, chunky shapes. 5 seconds left. Okay, well that's not enough. But you know what? It's not bad for like a start of something, you know? I feel like if I look at this, I can understand kind of that it's snowy, maybe. It feels kind of snowy. Castle, snow. I mean, it doesn't look super snowy, but put some white snow all over here, just kind of making shapes. Yeah, not my favorite thing I've ever made, but that's, you know, that's okay. It's not bad for a warm-up. Getting my hand warmed up. Funny enough, my hand's almost tired. I don't know why. Why is my wrist tired? Anyway, there's a snowy thing. Snowy mountain. Maybe this is a scene. I know this was a 5-minute thumbnail, and now I'm still going, and it's been more than 5 minutes. But maybe there's like a Santa or a person on a long road, walking down this long road. That looks great. Thanks. It looks like something. There's Santa. The famous ivory tower. Santa with the big bag slung over his shoulder. Homeless Santa? No, Santa just on the nomadic Santa. He's looking. He's spawned into a new Minecraft world, and he has to go figure out where he's gonna build his base for the holiday season. And he's like, you know what? Let's go north. Let's go up over here, and we're gonna build our. Is that supposed to be? I don't know. Snow, I guess. Maybe snow. It's supposed to be snow. Snowy scene. I wanted to make it a little lighter, so I started out sort of lighter. Anyway, that'll be. I didn't put a lot of time into it, but anyway, let's do something. So I actually kind of like the idea, kinda. But I didn't spend enough time on it, so I'm gonna copy this whole thing. This is something I think is good practice. Yeah, like a white desert. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's pretty much how I would start. Maybe the shadows are too dark. True. The shadows might be a little too dark for snow. That's one of those things where adding some variation in color and light, it can go a long way. But yeah. When you're just roughing something in 5 minutes, it can be hard to get a nice material or, to make it look like snow. Or at least for me. I'm not that good. But yeah, maybe we'll add some blue, some lighter stuff. Maybe we get some purples. I know purples are really nice in snow. Okay, so just because this is still a thumbnail and we just started, what if I just went like white lines, like lights. Just making the lights go around. They're gonna be, you know, maybe red lights and green lights, you know, just classic Christmas colors. Just blobbing them in everywhere, just seeing what happens. I don't know why I would do this, but maybe some red, dashes of red, you know, on his head. Red on his head. We've got there. We've got the maybe he's the Grinch. No, I don't think so. I think this is Snowman. Okay. Or Snowman. Santa Claus. Okay. This is Snowman. This is the Snowman. Keeper of the Snow. Okay, now, what if we went like this and we made like massive pillars of something, you know? Basically, I just want to play around with the shapes a bit, figure out what it is I'm painting. Are these gonna be that way? It's a very precarious bridge. Something like that. Very precarious. That would not be a pleasant thing to walk on in the winter. That's just a good way to die. Like, let's walk across this slick bridge without railing, just probably covered in ice and snow. That doesn't seem like a good time. I don't know. I'm no architect, but if I were, this would be a bad thing to build. Bad bridge design right here. Icy slick bridge, maybe at an angle. Yeah, a little precarious. There we go. Go like this. But yeah, that's something. Giant tower, this underside here. I do like it. I like the idea, kinda. I mean, I don't know if it's how Christmassy it is. We can recarve some shapes. Maybe it'll be like Santa's. What would Santa's work? Imagine Santa existed and he were like, you know, I feel like if he did, just the name recognition alone pretty much puts him in like Jeff Bezos territory, right? Like he's definitely up there in terms of big industry, you know? Like Megacorp, Mega Millions has all these workers working below him, you know. He's like a household name. Like he's basically a, what do you call it? Like a, he has like he has his sort of, you know, empire, right? And it's major, huge amounts of money, massive business on massive scale, literally global scale. I feel like I'd put him up there with like Jeff Bezos, right? So I'm trying to think, like, what would his headquarters look like, right? It's gotta be like this super villain on an island layer, right? Or like some obnoxious, like, mega campus, like Google, like the Google campus, where it has like all these different facilities and they're trying to get their employees to spend time there. I'm just trying to think. But also he can fly, so like he's kind of magical, and so it's like a magical mega corporation. which kind of... I mean, my brain's going to like the Disney, what's it called? Not Adventureland. What's the name of it? The Tomorrowland. It reminds me a little bit of like Disney's Tomorrowland, where it's sort of like a tech renaissance sort of inventors fair, world's fair vibe. You have all these people from all over trying to invent things and be the future, and basically propelling humanity forward into the future with their tech and their gadgets. And it's sort of like this like utopia, inventors world kind of, where everybody is the world's your playground. You get to build things and be creative and try out, make gadgets, and you have all the resources available to you. It's kind of that vibe. That's kind of how I think of Santa. He'd be like the super futuristic optimist dude, like tech bro, who's like just trying to make cool stuff for the sake of making cool stuff. And like it'd be very like futuristic, except like tech bro and like maybe a non, like still in like a not completely dystopian way. I don't know. So I'm thinking like very, almost like sci-fi. Sci-fi Santa Claus. There has to be sci-fi Santa Claus stuff, right? Like futuristic Santa Claus with his jets on his, instead of reindeer, he has like flying hoverboard things. At least he's making toys and Cybertrucks. I mean, he probably is making toy Cybertrucks. And let's be real, Santa's not making crap. It's his workers that are doing it. Probably underpaid, understaffed, overworked. Like, let's be real. He's just skimming off the top. Santa's making the big bucks. He's rolling around probably in a Cybertruck, to be honest. Yeah, Futurama, basically. Santa's a murder bot in Futurama because everyone's been bad for short of 1,000 years. I like how the stream just went like dystopian real quick. But yeah, maybe. But there's a book called The Murderbot Diaries, which is actually pretty good. It's a series. They're like these fairly short books. Or they're very short books actually. It's of like a robot in the future who has like a conscience, and he names himself kind of jokingly like a murder bot, but he's like the good, like he's not the good one, but he's like one of the few conscious robots, and he's like hacked his own system to like make him conscious, but he's basically just trying to fit in. So he's trying to go unnoticed because it's not like he's a malfunctioned robot. And he's like, he has a sense of humor, and he's just like jokingly calls himself Murderbot. Actually, aren't they making a Netflix show of it? Or maybe they already did. I don't know. I think I saw them announce they were gonna make it. But yeah, anyway, it's called I think it's the Murderbot Diaries. But it's a good book series. It's fun. It's a fun book series. I think it's fun. So, designing shapes. Let's make these shapes feel... I mean, we don't want medieval, do we? We want fantasy or sci-fi. So maybe we'll put some bright lines in here. But yeah, it's funny that the name Murderbot makes you think you're gonna get into like a dark and gruesome tale, but really it's like he's like the nicest dude ever, and it's like he has nothing but like kindness in his heart. Kinda. And we're making a giant like float. This is where the reindeer load up their... The big sleigh loads up. Here's the reindeer. I'm just making blobs because I don't want to actually paint reindeer right now. How do sleighs look? I don't know. But we're just going to go like this. It's a sleigh being loaded up in like a loading dock. And then you have cranes in industry. I don't think that's I don't think I want to go this route with like making it like a giant shipping bay. Also, this thing is massive. I don't know what I'm painting. But yeah, Cold Case of Creativity, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. Hope the day is good. Alright. There's some Santa. See, I don't know if I like that. Let's try something else. I mean, I do like the color palette, though. I mean, it's simple, right? It's very simple. So, but let's do an iteration. This one, we're going to go brave. Bravery mode. We're going to completely change it. Completely ruin it. Not really. Maybe not ruin. Maybe we will. We're going to go multiply. Nope, not multiply. Multiply there. And then I'm going to take like a red and just go over the whole thing. All sorts of red everywhere. And then that feels more dystopian, doesn't it? It looks more like a fog almost. What about this? Blue, purple. Ooh, I kind of like that. And then, so what I'm trying to do right now is just get some new colors in here. That's it. Just get new colors. And then once the new colors are in here, it's morning. Morning, and he's arriving home from his long journey. Cold Creativity says, doing good, man. Good, man. Taking some TLC time off my own business and work. Been working really hard lately. Oh, nice. I lost 25 pounds exercising. Dang, good job. I mean, yeah, good job. That is good. Always, that's good. I was going to say, it depends on how quickly it happened, right? If it was like in a week, that's unhealthy. But that's good. A month sober and continuing, nice. And I've been making aprons and doing t-shirt prints. Oh, that's super cool. Well, it sounds like you're doing great. Keep up the good work. And yeah, it's good to take some time off for yourself. That's, I actually had this realization. So like, I hardly ever take time off because I only work part-time, but I still have like holiday pay. But like, I can just slot in my time off into the days that I don't work because I don't work 5 days a week. So I need to start like filling in my vacation time in the days so that I can just get paid more for like doing the same thing that I'm doing, because I don't actually want like a vacation. I mean, I can't really take one because I don't have the money. Anyway, so I like the colors here. I don't know if I like the what, I mean, I kind of like the vibe. Thanks, dude. You too. You're an amazing artist and hard worker. Oh, thanks. I don't know if I'm a hard worker, but I appreciate the amazing artist compliment. That's very kind of you to say. I feel I feel it, but breaks. They are. They are. I'm pretty chill about. Like, I'm not. I don't think of myself as a hard worker. Like, even when I'm working, I'm pretty chill. I don't know. Especially at like non-self-employed things. Like, if I'm doing something for myself, I'll work hard. But I also doesn't feel as like it doesn't. It's not stressful. But if I'm working for like my employer, non-art related, I'm not trying to go up the food chain of the corporate hierarchy, I don't give a crap. I don't have, like, I'm not like a bad worker, in my opinion, but I don't have like a loyalty and an unwavering respect for my employer, like they don't really care about me. They, so well, we're in an agreement. They pay me if I do a job, right? Um, and so long as I do my job and they will keep paying me and like we're good. But like I'm not gonna go above and beyond and I'm not gonna stress about them when I'm not there. If I heard that you know, the place was doing poorly, I wouldn't be like, oh, poor company making money off of its workers, Like I wouldn't stress me out in the slightest. Like I might be like, oh crap, better start looking for another job. But like I'm not. I don't feel like I let my part-time job get to me because I don't think of like because I work for like a big company. It's like a big grocery chain, and I don't care about them. Not really. Like I care enough to do a good job, but I'm not gonna worry about it on my day off when I'm not there. I'm not getting paid if I'm not there, so I don't need to worry about it when I'm not there because I'm not a manager and I don't want to be because I don't want to have to worry about stuff, right? But for my own work, right, for stream, for art, that stuff I do care about, but I also feel good when I put in a lot of time. It's actually the hard thing for me is to like be too lazy or it's easy for me to sort of not work hard enough. So working hard actually feels good for me in those areas. So yeah, I'm probably not quite in the same situation as you. I think a lot of people, I talk about it sometimes on stream, but a lot of times I feel like people sort of have this like, I mean, everybody's job's different, right? I think if you're in a high position, then like it's understandable. You're going to take it with a very amount of seriousness. But there's a lot of people who are just in a similar situation, like, not their career of choice, not high level job, not high pay, right? And they take it with a seriousness that feels disproportionate to sort of the job itself. And it's like they'll get stressed out about anything because they care a lot about it. And I don't know. For me, that's a tough one. I try not to be like over care about a job that doesn't inherently care about me, right? Like I try to keep it pretty level-headed in that regard. Working for someone is tough because sometimes you put in a lot. Well, that's the thing, right? I'm aware of that, and so I try not to put in more than I get out of it. I try to do my job, but if there's like job creep, where like if you work really hard and especially if you're I don't know your situation, but like I know for hourly workers, if you work faster, you just end up doing more and you don't get paid more because you're getting paid hourly and they're not going to pay you more for working faster. Like they're clearly not paying you for the job you're doing. They're paying you for the time you spend, which if they wanted to pay you for the job you're doing, they should pay you for the job you're doing regardless of how much time it takes, right? And then that would incentivize you to work faster because now you're getting paid the same for less time, right? And so you're actually saving money. But if I work faster, I'm actually getting paid less, right? That's ridiculous. That if I can go in and let's say I have 8 hours of work, but I get it done in 4, I'm getting paid half as much. How make that make sense, right? So I'm not gonna work. There's no reason for me to like work faster, work harder, right? Like I don't benefit from it at all. I'm not looking for promotion. Promotions aren't even good there. Like what's the, so it's kind of a tricky situation. I think, yeah, I'm definitely in a job that because they have a task for me to do, and I need to do the task, and then I get paid for it. They should be paying me salary, but they're not, and so it's kind of their fault. I've been a carpenter, and physical work I was doing was not well compensated, and I was getting no benefits. It was terrible. Oh, that sucks. All right. Sorry, that was a random rant tangent about work. Or I should say about work that is not compensating well. But artwork is awesome, and art jobs are awesome, and I do want to. But when it's for yourself, right? I think when you're working for yourself, at least in my experience, you do want to do a good job because it's your name, it's your career, right? It's like it all builds on each other, the relationships you form, like that actually does matter. But not at like a grocery store, right? Not at some random business that you're working for that, you know, is trying to get away with paying you. If they could pay you less, they would, right? Like those jobs. All right, let's repaint this a little bit. Let's rework it. It's also something that is worth doing in painting. I'm just making a big shape. So one of my I'll try to talk through my thought process to keep it on art a little bit. A lot of times when I have like I know if I have a sunset here, which I've kind of lost the sunset, but if I have a sunset right here, right in the painting, I often, what I'll do is I'll try to use it to like, well, what if we had an arch and the sunset was poking through the arch, right? Or like, how might I show that sunset? You know, maybe I do something like this to where I can see the whole horizon, because maybe that would look nice, right? And so maybe I want the sunset to go like that, so that we have like a mountain peak over here. And so maybe I want to do something floating. That way we have this nice view of like the sunset, but we can still see the thing above it. And so sometimes there's compositions, or yeah, I guess compositions of things that will sort of emphasize or enhance the qualities of your painting that's already there. If you've decided you have a sunset, you can enhance the sunset by making something sort of, you know, frame it, or you know, you can silhouette the thing by the sunset. Sorry for distracting. No, you're fine. You're fine. You didn't. If I go off the rails and start rambling about something unrelated, it's always my fault. I am the one in control of it. I choose ultimately if what we talk or what I say, and you may have influenced me to say something, but ultimately I took the bait, I did the thing, and therefore I'm responsible. That's how it works. So don't feel bad for derailing chat, unless you're trying to derail chat, but I can sniff that out, and, you know, people will. Yeah, don't do that. Don't be an intentional stream derailer, but you're not. When I ask you how you are and you tell me how you are, that's not derailing. That's normal. But yeah. Do I like this? I mean, it's like a giant floating shape. Maybe we'll get rid of our Santa there. Maybe it's changing our scale for us unintentionally. Just gotta double check. Okay. So yeah, I'm just trying to think how might this work? I mean, we've got sunset. Maybe we put some snow. One of the things I don't like about snow scenes is that oftentimes it's hard to get angular shapes. Right? Like it's hard to get angular shapes because you have snow on top. Like, snow doesn't make angles. It piles up in this smooth, rounded thing. And it's... I know you can make them angle. Like, you can, you can shape design them in an angle. But it's kind of hard. It's sort of... It's not always easy. Not that that makes it bad. Hard stuff is fine to do, but it doesn't always come off as naturally, and so sometimes I find myself doing like these little like loosey-goosey round blob shapes, and I don't like it. And so I'm kind of trying to like make stuff a little bit more... I mean, you can have angles in snow, but it's tricky to have them everywhere. Like I guess what I'm trying to say is I think snow lends itself to round shapes very well, right? It doesn't really lend itself to angles. You can obviously make it happen, right? Artistic choices and all that, good design. You absolutely can do it, but I just find it's really hard, and it's hard to make it look good. It doesn't feel like it's always the best solution. It's like it's a choice, and yeah, you can do it, but maybe it wasn't the best choice. Maybe some mountain peaks? I don't know. It could just be a generic scene. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. I am going to try to paint a little smaller, like with smaller lines, almost more scribbly. Because I think one of the things I want to do in this is have interesting shapes. Like, more angles, more small shapes, stuff like that, where sometimes when I paint with a big brush, I end up making like the same shapes. Everything's like has this round edge. So maybe we'll go that route. Another tower. I mean, I actually like some rock structures. I know rocks aren't very Christmassy. Maybe we can do like designs on somehow. Some snow shape. I'm just kind of scribbling it in. I know some people say don't chicken scratch, but I'm gonna chicken scratch here. I'm not confident in what I'm drawing. I'm completely just figuring it out, and I don't need it to look confident because I can always go over it. This is very, very much me just making chaos. I mean, I do like this. This is not bad. Maybe this is where the presents sit. We have presents on here. Gifts. This doesn't look Christmassy. It's snowy. Maybe there will be a reindeer here. Maybe that's what we'll do. That's a thought. Okay, that's a thought. Let's make a reindeer. Let's find reindeer. Not reindeer names. It's like an actual reindeer, which are a thing, believe it or not. Who was it? There was somebody like famous or popular who thought reindeer were fake, and they like on air, they're like, reindeer aren't real, and they're like, yeah, they are. Like the flying variety aren't, but the animal is a thing. Anyway, I thought it was funny. They're kind of weird looking animals, to be honest. All right, let's do this. If we have the reindeer, so there's two ways, right? If we could have the reindeer, here's just my thoughts. We could have the reindeer's body going this way, right? And head up here. Or we could have it the other way. I think I want it the other way. That way it's facing inward, right? That way it's sort of like looking this way in a way. Not really. Like, it can still be looking towards us, but, you know, if this is its head, this is how I draw a reindeer head. Ears, body, legs, right? That way it's sort of, its head is in the same spot, but it's sort of looking into the scene, right? Or it's, even if it's facing us, it's still sort of opening. It's like it's standing on this side of the scene. It's sort of framing it, right? Whereas if it's over here, it kind of feels like it's pushing our eyes that way. So like same object, but it's sort of pushing an attention to one side of the painting. I don't know if that makes sense, right? Like this versus this and being the focal point, right? Like that to me is like an arrow pointing this way, and this feels like an arrow pointing that way. And it just, to me, unless you have a story that's like the character walking around the corner or something, it kind of just, I don't know. I think I'm going to try it this other way. That was my thought. It might not be the right choice, but it's a choice that I can justify. And I think on art, honestly, in design in general, but art and design, that's a big thing, right? It's like, it doesn't, like, just being able to justify your choices, I think is super important. And then as you learn how to make better justification for your choices, and thus making better choices, right? And so long as like you and yeah, and I think that's pretty much it, right? Like that's what it is. I mean, this is almost the same as, gosh, I'm going to use the chess analogy again. You guys have heard me say this a million times, but like it's the same with chess, right? Have a reason why you make a move. And if you're a total beginner, your reasoning's going to suck, but at the moment it's the best you can do, right? And as you learn, you will learn why your reasoning doesn't work, right? Like, ooh, I want to attack my king, but you're like, oh wait, but my king is undefended, and they're gonna get the chance to attack me before I attack them. Maybe I shouldn't attack yet, right? Like, but at first you're like, oh, attacking's good, and sure, why not? But like, as long as you can justify it, it's not. I think it's good. So yeah, the same as in art, right? Like, oh, I think if I do this, it's gonna affect the composition in this way, and then you do the thing and it doesn't, and you're like, oh, maybe the opposite is true. Maybe I should have done the other thing. And then then you re-update your justification, and before long you understand how and why to paint something a little better. So yeah, that's kind of, I feel like that's how my brain works when it comes to art. It's trying to constantly make assumptions about what is good and why. Here's the antlers. Because I sometimes get the impression, and maybe this is just totally off base here, but and this is true of pretty much anything, also chess, but video games or art, or probably most of things, sports for sure, right? Where like, if you, the other way of doing it is you just do things, and when it works, you then try to remember what you did. But like, you don't actually know why you did what you did in the first place, so it's very hard to like, how do I repeat it, right? Because it might not be the outcome that you're trying to repeat, right? It's the process. You're trying to think about like, how do I make that choice again? Well, in this, right, that same choice, but in a different situation would be a different outcome. And so you can't just repeat what you did, because that's not, right? That's like trying to, trace your steps exactly, but then you're in a different environment. Those steps aren't going to work, right? And so to me, it just doesn't feel like it's a good way about going about learning. Whereas if you have a hunch, you again, it's almost scientific, right? You have a hypothesis, like if I do this, this will happen, and then you try it, and you're like, oh wow, it worked, and here's why I did it, and then next time you can also make the here's what I'm going to do for a reason. Even if your situation changes, it'll still work. I know this isn't, I'm not saying anything new, but also this thing's head is facing the opposite direction that I said I was going to make it face. Anyway, here's a reindeer. Not a very good looking reindeer, but it's a reindeer. Also, this bright spot needs to go. We can put bright spots in there later if we want. Probably like on the reindeer's head. I like that. That's nice. Maybe we've got Santa up here. Just, I don't know, chilling. No, I was gonna say maybe there's the sled. I don't really know how the sleds look. I guess they're like this, right? That? I don't think we're gonna put Santa up there. I don't really like Santa as a character. I just feel like he's kind of... I don't know. I mean, it's fun. It can be goofy and silly, but I never really liked the association of Christmas and Santa. Like, I feel like he cheapens it, kind of. A little bit. Ah, we're getting raided! As I'm trash-talking Santa Claus. Welcome, Raiders! How's it going? Welcome, welcome. We are painting a Christmas card, maybe. Hello, hello! You guys might be stuck in ads, because I don't run ads, and so it's just pre-rolls. But, Pterodox, how are you? How is your stream? I'm gonna type the Welcome Raiders part. Welcome, Raiders. Hopefully you're not stuck in a pre-roll ad. But yeah, long-time lurker, so I decided to stop by. Oh, double raid! Neehaw! Also a double raid. Welcome, Raider! 2 raids at a time. Holy moly. How's it going? Welcome in. So, Pterodox and Neehaw, both of you, hope you're doing well today. If you were doing any art and would like to share what you were working on, I would love to see. You can drop a link. You don't need a permit. You know, yeah, art tax. You know the drill. But yeah, how are you? How was streams? Both of you. What were y'all working on? We're on Santa's naughty list this year for trash talking him. No regrets. Yeah, we were trash talking Santa Claus, or I was a little bit. Most people were staying silent on the matter, maybe for fear of the naughty list. But I was just saying that I feel like Christmas with Santa feels like it cheapens it a little bit, and I feel like without Santa, it can be like this cozy, comforting, like, you know, just I don't know, like winter vibes with lights and stuff. But once you start throwing like the Grinch and Santa and elves and reindeers and all these like creatures, it starts feeling gimmicky. I don't know. Maybe that is the point. Mine was good, was working on a commission. Nice. You think it's the point to cheapen it? Hiss. Yeah, maybe I'm insulting people. It's comfy. I mean, look, I like the comfy vibes. I like the cozy fireplace, you know, crackling, you know, snow everywhere. That's nice. No, the point to have hokey comfort. Yeah, that's fair. I guess it's every different people's cup of tea. Speaking of which, don't forget to hydrate. But yeah, thank you for the follow. I will totally be watching the Christmas special. The energy bill in winter is super expensive, so I'm being tactically naughty. Why is that hard? I thought you were saying tactically naughty to get free coal. True, that's in this economy, that's a smart move. Here's what you've been working on. Let's take a look. Ah, this is amazing! Look at, we got some art. Your art is absolutely gorgeous. Pterodox. This is so... Here, let me put it up on screen. This is Pterodox's art. Absolutely amazing. Niha, do we have any art from you? What were you working on? I don't know if I'm saying your name right, by the way. You said you were a long time... Pterodox says long time lurker, so I just had to stop by. Well, I appreciate it. That means a lot. But yeah, hope your stream went well. This is gorgeous. I love this. It's kind of Christmassy. Wait, is this Christmassy? Do you guys consider... I mean, there's a weird part of me where I feel like devils, they aren't inherently Christmassy, but they totally should be. I mean, they kind of are with, like, Krampus? I almost said Krampus. Krampus. Krampus is kind of like a devil-y thing. I feel like horned creatures are pretty Christmassy. And, like, fortune-telling. Santa Claus is the fortune-teller. He knows if you've been naughty or nice. So, like, I don't know. You've got the crystal ball. You've got the horn. Somehow it feels vaguely Christmas. LMAO, it's for Terra's Terra Challenge. You're on hosting on Discord server. Well, it looks great. It looks amazing. I'm just making up a story here. I'm making up lore why, you know, Santa Claus is a fortune teller, horned creatures, the whole shebang. It basically, it's all, I don't know. It's very, I feel like Christmas is a very fantasy holiday. More so than even like Halloween in some ways to me. Maybe I'm being blasphemous or something. I don't know. But yeah, no, this is great. This is gorgeous. I love the lighting. The ball looks great. The smoke, very moody, and it creates a vibe that is great. Also, the cigarette, which is a nice touch. Also, is this character is wearing like a tracksuit? Is that like an Adidas shirt? We've got the Adidas on. I like it. This is cool. You did the shirt really well, by the way. Like, around the arms, the scrunching of the clothing, but you still have the lines. That's really good. This is super cool. Amazing work. Yeah, thank you for bringing your community in. And hope everyone's doing well. It's your character, and because I'm Slavic, there has to be Adidas jacket. That's funny. That is like a very Slavic thing, isn't it? What? How did that come to be? I feel like there's history there, right? Like, how is everybody wearing Adidas like such a thing? It's just like culturally just like picked up and just became a thing? Was there like a celebrity who did it and everybody caught, like how do these things start? I don't understand, but I like it. Okay, let's do some art. Let's continue painting on this. We haven't seen any work from Niha, but if you would like to share what you were working on. Oh, wait, no, you said you were working on a commission. Never mind. Maybe that's why. You probably don't want to share a commission. You're probably not allowed to. But you were streaming it, so maybe you are. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, so we're just kind of painting some snowy scenes. No fortune-telling Santa Clauses with horns in here, but maybe we slap in some colors, some green and red lights or something. Maybe not. We could put the lights on the horns of the reindeer. That could be a thing. It's kind of nice. I think I might go fairly simple for the painting this year. I think last year I said I was going to go complex, but I'm kind of running out of time. Ooh, this is gorgeous. What the heck? Finished up this Space Spot says finished up this painting yesterday. This is gorgeous. This is wild. What the heck? That rendering. All right, I noticed your signature says Sarah Dwin. Is that your Instagram handle? Is that your what's the you got a name disconnect. Is that just what you go by on everywhere else? The rendering is gorgeous. Super gorgeous. It's also your Discord? Gotcha. Yeah, that's amazing. That rendering is so good. Also, I really like how you didn't do as much, as that the rendering is less tight as you go outward. So, like, the hair parts, the snake bits, I don't know what you call it. The circular thing. And then also down, like, on the shoulders, it's a little more blobby and loose. And you have this super tight rendering around the eyes and the nose and the face. I really like that. And then the bow is super well done. Also, are those a bunch of... You got a bunch of stickers? Is that what this is? A little, like, bedazzled? You've got the smiley face sticker. All these little sticker things. See, this is so good. This is really cool. I'm not going to share it on screen. I try to only share people who raid. But you guys should totally check out Space Spot's art that they just linked. That is extremely well done. Really gorgeous. It was inspired by Decora subculture. Decora. I gotta Google that. Decora. I didn't know this existed. It's a Japanese street fashion style that originated in the Harajuku district in the late 1990s. So it's like super colorful, stickered up. That's cool. You know, I really like that. Maybe I'm just out of the loop and that, but it feels a little niche to me. Which makes it really cool to have a character of that, because it sort of, because it's just not something you see a lot, right? Like, I don't feel like I've never seen a fantasy character with this aesthetic. That is so different. And yet, you'd think that I would have seen that more than once if it's like a big, right? Like, I've seen goth characters, right? Like, or emo characters of basically anything. But I've never seen that. And that's awesome. I don't know why, it's very cool to me. It really piques my interest. But yeah, if you came in with the raid, thank you for coming in with the raid. And also, if anybody else wants to share, you're welcome to. You can drop a link. I'd love to see what everybody's worked on. The style also fits the color palette nicely. So now I gotta ask, just from a pom-pom. True. That's that style, isn't it? That pom-pom song. I gotta ask now, because you said it's a commit. Wait, did you say this was a commission? I forget. No, you said you finished up this, but you didn't say if it's a commission. So did the character come first, or did you say, I want to paint a character in this style, and then you pick a character that fits that style? Like, is this a character that is sort of personified the style, so to speak? Like, I want to do a fantasy creature in this style, and then you pick the character based on, like, oh, pink skin would work. Or did you have the character and then sort of put them in the style? Does that make sense? Like, what sort of came first? Like chicken or egg kind of thing? Because I know if I was doing it, it kind of depends. Like, I think a lot of times in art, we can, like, pick a starting point and then build everything around it. And so sometimes, like, with my paintings, I'll actually pick, like, a mood first. I'll say, like, cozy. And then from cozy, we'll be like, okay, well, what about, like, a winter scene with a fireplace, right? That's cozy. And so before long, I'm painting, like, a nighttime scene in the winter, right? But I didn't start saying I want to paint a nighttime scene in the winter. I started by saying I want to paint cozy. But I could have started saying I want to paint a winter scene. Wouldn't it be nice if I also made it cozy, right? Like, it could have gone either way, but a lot of times my logic starts with, like, the just a random niche thing that I want to paint. Anyway, I had some people throw their characters at me, and I made some tweaks to suit. Gotcha. Okay, well, that's very cool. I really like what you did with it. So the pre-existing character, that also makes it tough. Yeah, you did a really good job with that. Just trying to put some snow around here. Some more snow. Maybe we do some footprints in the snow. I'm a big fan of, like, snowy footprints. I just feel like it adds a little bit of storytelling. It helps show that it's snow also, to put a little... Okay, but this is one thumbnail that we could do, which I like. I do like this one, but I think we can do better. So, I'm going to copy this. I'm going to merge visible. I'm going to paste it. And I'm going to mess it up. We're going to keep the lighting, though. Or keep the colors a little bit. Maybe not. Okay. This is going to be a new scene. Hello, KK Mousy. All right, so what if we do a scene where we're looking up a little bit? And this is going to be dark. And then up here, we have, like, a little pile of snow. Maybe. Maybe this is not a good idea. Kind of looks like a witch's hat. A witch's house. Hat. A witch. I want to say a witch's hut, but then I also want to say witch's hat. A witch's hat hut. It does look like a witch hat. Yeah, it looks like a witch hat. A witch's house. And so I was trying to draw a house, but it looked like a hat. Yeah, a little bit. I don't think I want to go that route, but it does kind of look like that. A witchy Christmas. I mean, it's not a bad idea. It's not inherently Christmassy, but you know what? I think it'll work. I mean, it doesn't have to be Christmassy. Really just snowy, winter-themed. You know, that's kind of what I'm going for. We don't need to go super dark, but sometimes it's nice to get some occluded areas in, or some very dark shapes, or dark recesses. So yeah, I don't know what this is yet. A lot of times when I'm painting, I'm just starting very abstract. Because we already have some thumbnails that I think are kind of fun. We got Santa on a journey, wandering down to some giant mega city or something. And then over here we got just a little cozy scene. But over here, maybe we do something a little different. Maybe we do something with like magic. So we got like imagine you have like a cauldron or something. Hold on. Maybe not a cauldron, but like something with sort of, you know, Christmas spirit vibes where you're, you know, conjuring something Christmassy. Thank you for the follow. Howdy, howdy, RD Draws. How's it going? Didn't you already say hello today? Hi, by the way. Hope you're doing well. But hi again. I think you were here at the start of stream, weren't you? Do you want a nuke.com domain? No, but that even doing that is a good way to almost get banned by a bot, by the way. Because there's a thing called SiriBot, and some of the like auto detection, like I think you're probably tiptoeing just by saying that. Just throwing it out there. Do with that info at your own risk. I think if you were to go into some people's chat and say that, you could get banned. I don't make the rules. Actually, I kind of do on my stream, but no, I wouldn't ban you. But yeah, with the bot spam we've had earlier. Well, I don't like to. Yeah, I know. But no, why would you ask that? Is the better. That's what I'm sorry. I don't mean to be rude. I'm just very curious why you ask that now. Like what's the. Are you. There was bot spam? Yeah, we had some bot spam in our Discord. I noticed it right before stream and I banned the bot. It was spamming links and stuff. But no, why would you? That's very how do I say this? Unrelated to anything we were talking about. Why would I want a nuke.com address? That don't go there, by the way, people. I don't know what that site is. But why would I want that address? That doesn't. Anyway, yeah. That's just normal you. Well, yeah, well, I don't, yeah, changing topics too briefly can be weird. Oh, yeah, but that's not good stream etiquette. But that's okay. You can have a pass for now. You've been told, though. You've been warned. Okay, what am I painting? I'm painting maybe magic Christmas crystals. Magic Christmas crystals, that's totally a normal thing that exists on Christmas, right? Magic Christmas crystals. I don't know. That's not really a thing. It does look like a witch hat, though. Sort of sparkles in the sky. Maybe we do sparkles in the like it's a cave. They have snowflakes, Santa hat. Yeah, maybe. Maybe the crystals have snowflakes, Santa hats, or stockings represent presents in them. That's kind of a good idea. Like little presents growing in the crystals, kinda? Or like, and yeah, maybe there's some stockings hanging or in them or hanging on them. So like, I'm just making a vague shape, but like here's a foot, here's a stocking. Obviously this doesn't look like it's inside the crystal yet, but you get the vibe. That's gonna be a stocking. I'm making it very blobby. That's a good idea. I like that. That's a really fun one. That's much more interesting than the other ones so far. Now, whether or not this is gonna look good, right? That's a different story. Do I make it look good or not? But yeah, maybe there's like a crystal cave. There's things all around us. Twinkling of the crystals. It's like a present in here. But yeah, that was a good idea. I always appreciate when people give me ideas because ideas are hard. Kinda. I think ideas are hard. Anyway, this obviously doesn't look good right now, but we'll have to... This is where references and crystals, like, there's a lot of references of, like, things in crystal and in amber and like, different types of references we can look at to figure out, like, how we want to approach this. Big brain time? Dude, you got the biggest... The Space Spot's got the biggest brain. It's a good idea. We could also do like maybe some from the ceiling. I don't want to go too dark. This is another tricky thing, right? So because this is like a cave, it's very tempting to go very dark. But that's not gonna give the Christmas vibe, right? So maybe I should have started with just like lots of... I mean, we could go kind of Christmas vibe here. Green, red. It's maybe too red. I don't know. I'm searching for some references in the multiverse. Okay. I don't know what that means, but good luck. I think that'll look nice. Yeah, maybe we get some lights bouncing around, maybe things hanging from the ceiling. We could do a little like little like ornaments dangling from the ceiling. Just basically, I just want this to feel like Christmas, you know? It doesn't have to like be anything, kind of. Not. Also, this is like a... Maybe there's a cave up. Maybe there's snow up here. This one's gonna be hard because I'm not quite sure what it is. But it does kind of feel like a cave or a cavern, maybe. Maybe there's like a... Maybe there's some negative space up here that we can see up through the... This is one of those scenes where if I'm not careful, it's gonna look really stupid. I mean, it's kind of okay. Hey, Tryhard Ellie, how's it going? So yeah, this is looking like a big hot mess right now, but you know what? We can totally... We can totally get there, though. Now, what's going on with the... this is a... Okay, I'm tempted to say this should be a horizontal image. Not a vertical image. If it's vertical, and we're looking upward, because we want to use the whole... I just bumped my mic. Sorry. Oh, so my mic is... Hopefully this isn't too loud. If it's vertical, maybe we're looking upward at it. So maybe we have... Okay, let's do something. My mic makes a lot of noise when I move it and touch it. So it's not good. I know some streamers have really good mics where you can just like move it around and do whatever. I can't do that. Okay, so we're gonna do something here. I'm gonna move everything upward. And I'm just gonna copy, paste. I'm just gonna move shapes up. Doing good, thanks. These look awesome, thanks. So this just looks like a hot mess right now, but that's okay. What about like a bunch of things growing in sort of like a tower? If I were to show someone this, they'd be like, what is this? This looks terrible. Because it does look terrible. It's funny. It's funny that I have an idea of where this is going. So we're gonna look up. Now, do I want it to be like do we want like a tower of crystals, or do we want like a cave where they're dangling from the ceiling? I don't know. I don't know the answer. I'm tempted to do a tower right now, because this is gonna be easier. I think if I go like this, stalagmites, stalactites with frozen pond. Yeah, maybe something like that. I was thinking more of like almost like imagine like a waterfall that's kind of frozen over, except instead of waterfall, yeah, like crystallized things. So maybe not stalactites or stalagmites, but sort of, yeah, that vibe, that general idea, where it's like we're looking up at a thing. Also, let's add some fill light here, just so I can work with this a little better. Let's add a nice blue. Maybe a nice gray up top. And some of this is going to be a cave underneath, maybe. And so, yeah, you have some of these things hanging down. Right? But then you also have some, like, up top. You know, some recessed areas. They should probably be more horizontal. But then we also have different areas. And so we still have our ground plane up here. I don't know if I like the overall shapes here. Nope. And then maybe there's like a cozy fire underneath, you know, that way we can still get that winter vibe, you know, a little campfire. Maybe this is a subtle campfire in the depths of this cave. Okay, this does not look like a cave right now. This does not look good, but I think the vision for me is becoming clear, and so now it's just a matter of communicating it properly. This is one of those cases where I think if I were to show this to people and ask them what it is, they would not know. Like, genuinely, I think if you guys can tell what it is, it's probably only because I've told you what it is. Like, maybe vaguely this thing looks like a cave, and maybe you could then guess, kind of, like, oh, maybe these are rocks and there's crystals. But I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced it actually reads. Not yet, anyway. We'll get there. I actually know of an image that's a good reference for, like, a low cave with, like, a bunch of rocks and stuff. I don't know if these are gonna be... Yeah, a bunch of things. Maybe this has snow up top. Maybe that's how it is. Maybe these would look better if they weren't pointy. I feel like pointy rocks don't look like Christmas. They don't give me any of that, that feeling of, like, you know, jingle bells. You know, they don't have a nice cozy feeling. You know? And then, yeah, maybe back here we get some, like, twinkling lights. I don't know. It's kind of fun. Again, maybe we need some fill in here. A little bit of light. I gotta think about it. There's something that I do like about this, though. This painting would be much harder. Here, let me find some references real quick, because maybe I can find some good stuff that will quickly let me fill this in. So, like a crystal cave type thing. There's this classic image here that I can show you guys. Oh. I don't know if you guys can see that yet. This, it's just like a cave full of crystals. Obviously, there's people, and this is pixelated beyond belief. But there's just a bunch of crystals, massive crystals everywhere. I don't know if that's quite what I want to do. I don't want to do just crystals everywhere like that, I don't think. But we could do something like that. There's also images within, like, the depths of, like, a snowy cavern. Like, maybe like that. I don't know. This could be AI for all I know. I don't think it is. I think this is in Belize. But yeah, we got, like, just a giant icy area. And so maybe somewhere in between, you know, there's obviously... lots of different stuff. I think the issue with this is gonna be that there's not enough. I think what we should do is reverse the lighting. So maybe like have like a smog or a fog back here. Cause I don't like doing atmospheric perspective in caves, right? Because it can feel weird to like have too much light in there. But I think if we're gonna make these things glowing, we should have like a green or red, sort of like a haze, where then we can pull out those values and sort of bring them to the forefront, you know? So like if we wanted a cave back, a crystal back here that's glowing. And I haven't worried about what the the stocking or the present idea yet. But if we had something like that, maybe if we have some foreground stuff, I don't know. Again, this stuff can be a little darker because it's in the foreground. I actually like this shape. Maybe if we merge visible, we can make a selection of this, which we already have. Kind of go like that. Kind of photo bashing my own painting with my own brush strokes. I don't know. This is a weird one. It's a weird painting. And then some stuff in here. Maybe this is actually darker in the foreground. That way we can just create a little separation. Now this doesn't look Christmassy yet. But that's okay. Is this the painting we want to go with, though? That's another question. This would say, like, Merry Christmas up here. Christmas caves. Maybe there's more traditional Christmassy stuff, like the white lights. Or, like, around some of the forms, like you know, strung up light. I don't know. Someone decorated the stalagmites. Stalactites. I guess stalactites are the one in the ceiling. Stalagmites are the one on the ground. You know how everybody has different ways of, like, remembering stalactite? So, like, some people, stalactite is C for ceiling, and stalagmite kind of looks like spikes, so they're on the ground, right? Like, these are, you know, spikies, because they're M's. I actually remember it a funny way. Somebody once in chat, we were talking about this, and somebody said, stalagmite fall on your head. And then we learned that, no, that's actually wrong. Stalagmites can't fall on your head because they're on the ground, right? They're the pointy ones. And so I remember it because it's the opposite of a stalagmite fall on your head. And so it's, yeah, that's how I remember it, is by knowing that it's the opposite of that saying. So, like, do you guys ever have a thing where, like, you remember it only for it being wrong? Because, like, that's how I remember it. I remember it for being wrong. which I think is awesome. We think in stories? Yeah. Yeah, seriously. Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do. We understand stuff through I mean, this is the same reason why in art I even just literally at the start of stream was like, when I make stuff, I like to tell myself a story of basically hypothesize why it's going to work, right? If I do this, then this will happen. That's a story, right? Like here is my decision for making this choice in art. And if that story doesn't work out, right, if I learn from it and then I can tell myself a different story. Oh, this thing actually doesn't work. This thing does. And here's why, it's very narrative driven of like how I learn and think about art. It's not so much like here is the story I want to tell. I mean, that happens too. But it's the thought process around like, if I put a really low perspective line, then I'm looking upward. If if I'm painting something in the sky, I need to look up at it. And so I'm like, oh, well, therefore maybe I should put the horizon line low, right? And like there's sort of a logic to it. And it's not the only logic. You could obviously paint something in the sky and be above it, right? You could look down on it. Maybe you want to be soaring in the sky too, and then so you need to position yourself and the camera in the sky. But those, to me, those are like, that's sort of a narrative way of thinking, right? Sort of like, why might you're telling yourself a story of why you might do something and why it makes sense, and it's kind of just like there's sort of some logic there and some reasoning, but it's very, yeah, it's like a story. Homo narrans. Is that what, like, narrative? Narrans? Is that stories? But yeah, ooh, I do like the idea of a stalactite, or stalagmite dressed up as a Christmas tree. What about right here? This one. Obviously, I'm not doing this nicely. I'm just very roughly putting it in. And then a nice star. Or an angel, but I'm just... Okay, this is just my sketch, so this is why I'm not being precious about it. I actually like the... I like this little stars. I like that. I think that's nice. Maybe we'll get rid of the campfire. Now the question is, am I going to be able to draw this well enough that you can tell what it is? Or paint it well enough? That's the struggle, right? I'm focused on other things, right? I'm clearly focused on, a little bit of composition, a little bit of just overall sort of narrative of like, does it kind of have that vibe to it? But, can I make the objects so clear that you can actually tell? Maybe you already can. I don't think so, though. Also, the fact that there's snow on the ground makes it a little less clear what it is. I mean, it's not really snow, but it could be. I put little pebbles or something in here. Anyway, that's a good thumbnail, I think. Not perfect, but I think it's pretty decent. I mean, it's very dark, right? You know, if I were to slap like a Merry Christmas on this, I'm just gonna write this because I'm lazy and I want space. I mean that kind of is the vibe works. Maybe there's like, you know, some sled tracks in here of like, you know, going through the North Pole. Maybe there's a deer somewhere in there. It's not bad. It works. Okay, now we can get rid of that one. But I think this is just a... I mean, I will say I do like some of the shapes here a little better. Actually, let's try that again. Let's go back here with the glow dodge. I mean, this green is just unbelievable. In the color is just so much. It almost looks alien, which is kind of off-putting. I could do something like that. Bring in some light from like the side. Something like that's not bad. Now they don't. Now they look like trees though. They don't actually look like rocks. Whereas if it's dark, you can kind of get away with like, okay, it actually looks like a cave. That's bright. That's like what's the scene in Terminator where the nuclear explosion goes off and the scene just goes like this and fades to white. You guys know what I mean? It's like it's just the whole thing. That reminds me of that. That's what this color looks like. Color dodge, man. I saw a post on Reddit. I need to watch Terminator again. Yeah, it was a good movie. I saw a post on Reddit showing the like behind the scenes, not really behind, but like an unedited version of a scene from uh, James Bond and the color grading they did, and the comments were hilarious, and they were basically just talking about how like we have gotten to the point where if you want to show like a I don't know, Mexico in a scene, then you just color grade it as yellow. If you want to show London, you color grade it as gray. If you want to show, you know, Russia, it's like a blue green or something. I don't know. There's different like basically you just, oh, you want to show you're in a desert in a hot place? Let's just make everything yellow. It doesn't matter how not that way it is in real life. It was just funny because it is so, when you see the original footage, which is probably with like an iPhone or something, and then you see the actual cut, because like one's like a, you know, it's not from the main camera, but it's from like somebody probably on set or something, but it's like a side-by-side shot of like what's happening. Let me see if I can find it. It was pretty cool. It was on Reddit. I don't know. It was James Bond color correction is what I'm gonna Google. Oh yeah, here it is. Oh no, there's music to it. Okay, so this. So the top is the scene of like him, right? This is like the original, but look how yellow it is, and it's like it looks fine, right? I think it looks okay. It's very yellow, but like when you compare it to like how the day really looked that day, it's certainly not, uh, you know, certainly not yellow, and it's just such a big difference of colors, you know, like look at all there. If you pause the scene, there's reds and blues, and obviously you can't see that stuff, but like the greens are green, and there's people in the crowd that had, you know, red shirts on and different colors. You know, the thing he's stepping onto here is red and white, and like, but you can't tell that, it's all just the same, right? Like if you pause the scene, there these are like vibrant colors, but like not in this image. Anyway, I think it's pretty wild. But a lot of the explanations for why this was the case was I mean, again, I don't know if I'm not going to take Reddit's explanation for it, but you know, this scene is supposed to take place in Mexico, and that's their version of showing how it's in Mexico is by just color grading it, because like apparently that's, I don't know. It's just funny, but it's also interesting, and it kind of is smart, but also it kind of gets a little stereo. It's Mexico filter. It is. It is. It's a Mexico filter. Uh, yeah, but like different countries have different filters, right? Because like they want to show them as in different light so that you can like it's like an example of artists creating a visual language that becomes so popularized, it's just like a straight up stereotype at this point. Like, this is the fault of artists, right? I'm from Mexico, they gave us a new tradition. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, this is like maybe a tricky topic to even talk about. Um, but this happens so much, right? Like visual language, because it's so simple, right? It's simple as in there's like one dimension, right? It's visual. There isn't also audio, sound. Oftentimes you're doing something in a single image, right? It's not always a movie. But like if you're designing a character, I mean, we rely and to create stereotypes, right? Like literally, if you want to show an assassin, the way that you show an assassin needs to communicate this is an assassin. Now, some movies, for example, can rebrand what it means to be an assassin, right? But a lot of them rely on past examples of assassins to quickly communicate it, right? It's like at a single glance, you're like, that's an assassin, right? You know who he is because they've relied on tropes and stereotypes and visual language that's sort of you've already. There's a. I always bring up this example, but like in a single image, right? You can sort of establish something, so you can be like, here's a character, and you guys have probably seen me do this, right? But like, here's a character, and this character is gonna have, you know, a red shirt, no, pink shirt, green pants, you know, just obnoxious colors. Here's our green shirt or pink pants, green or green or sorry, pink green pants, pink shirt dude, right? And then imagine I'm gonna paint a crowd of people, right? And so I'm like, I'm gonna paint a crowd of people. We'll give this person, sorry, we'll give him orange skin. I could paint a crowd of people by going like this, and this, and this, right? And now you know that these are people. And you know that because I've already trained you, right? I've trained you to recognize, and like this is effective. And that to me is something that we are doing all the time, whether it's not always just in visuals, but sometimes it's with story elements, right? Sometimes it's written, sometimes it's narrative, sometimes. So if we establish a scene of like, this is what Mexico looks like, it kind of makes sense that you're gonna then use that because now the work's been done for you, right? The work has been done. to make that established thing. At the same time, when other artists use it and people, you use things, it just creates like this super simple language where like, yep, this is Mexico. It's this ugly, or maybe not ugly, but it's this filter. It's this yellow filter. And it's kind of, it's sort of like, this on its own isn't bad, but when it becomes so popular, suddenly it's bad because now you've created like a stereotype, kind of, right? Like you've essentially created something, a representation of something that is inaccurate, right? All representations are inaccurate. If you take any representation and use it up for everything, right? One representation of a pirate, all pirates look like this. No, that's bad. But at the same time, it's so useful, and it's like, we did this. This is artists are like stereotyping machines. Like we create these things. We create a language that a shared understanding of something. It's so tricky. It is so tricky. I mean, this has happened in like every field of, every profession ever has had this problem. Doctors on TV, lawyers on TV, right? Things that TV like makes it into something that it isn't. And so people's idea of what this thing is not like what the thing is. There's going to be things that are wrong. A lawyer's day-to-day is not always just standing up there and, talking to a jury. Like, that's not... And yet, like, that's what we think of. And so if you want to show a lawyer, what do? You show them arguing in front of a jury. That's how you show a lawyer. Because everyone knows it, and you don't have to work. Now you can focus on the rest of the story. Anyway, I think I'm torn. Like, I love it. I think it's cool that we can do that. And there's sort of this, from a communication standpoint, I think it's awesome. But at the same time, there's sort of a responsibility there, right? Of like, don't spread misinformation. And like, I don't know. It's a tricky topic. I think that's how BCS did it too. Yeah, a lot of shows do that when it comes to like taking a filter to show a place. Because again, a lot of times things aren't even shot on location, right? So like if you're gonna shoot something that's supposed to be, I mean, this happens even not to like places with culture, right? Where maybe it's a touchy subject. But like, if you want to show a scene on Mars, like, you're probably gonna color grade it to like be a little more red, because it's Mars. and so like there's certain, it reduces the amount of nuance you can add to a scene. It does. And I think movies are probably, I mean, action movies are tricky, right? Because the focus is on the action, and so they're not setting time. They're not giving time in the story to establish what the environment is like, right? So like if they hop on a plane from London and arrive in Mexico, right? So from London to Mexico, you want it to look like a scene change, right? But you don't want to have to describe everything. And so it kind of makes sense that you're going to do this like ham-fisted way of doing it. It's very heavy-handed, right? Not a lot of nuance. But if you're in like a drama movie, right, where it's a lot slower, there's a lot more fleshing out of the scenes and the characters, I think that's like a good opportunity to use sort of to redefine some of those standards. But like, I don't know if I would hold it against like the James Bond movie, because like, do you want them to dig into like the city they're in Mexico? Like if he's going there to like kill someone, he's not like integrating into the culture and trying to like mingle. They just want it to be like, boom, Mexico, boom, New York, boom, right? Like every scene in Mexico is going to show before 2021, every scene in Mexico showed the Twin Towers. Why? Because it was the most iconic building. You show it because you don't want to spend time establishing where you are. You just want it to be in their face, a backdrop, and you want it to be very clear. And so, but then there are shows like, I don't know, Sex and the City, which takes place in New York. And like, I don't think that show, to my knowledge, uh, that show doesn't seem to constantly show the Twin Towers or these other iconic things, because it's like, it's much more like on the streets kind of, you know? And so it feels like there's levels to this, right? And I think depending on what story you're telling and what's happening, uh you could show a guy eating a taco. Yeah, but then what if everybody shows a guy eating a taco, right? Now you've got a big stereotyping problem, right? It you're not wrong, but when one person does it, it's fine. When so it, like, but like when everybody does it, it becomes a problem. Oh, you're joking? Okay, but I mean, honestly, that's not a like that's not wrong in and of itself, but it does become a problem when everyone does it, because you kind of, I don't know, it's tricky. And then but the thing is it wrong when everyone does it? Because at the end of the day, we are communicating, right? And like, isn't that how language works? Like verbal language. If you say a phrase and someone understands you, then they're going to use the phrase because they want to be understood, and so then they repeat the thing. And now people can understand what they mean, and that's not a problem. But the second you do it with visual language, right? You use a quick, easy visual cue to say this is what Mexico is. Suddenly, when everyone does it, now it genuinely can become a problem, and so it's really tricky. Like, does everybody, I don't think everybody needs to invent a new language in everything they make, especially if you're like a single image, right? Like what I'm doing, literally one image. It's one thing if you're doing like a book or a movie, right? Because then you can like flesh things out, you can rewrite that language, you can give that close-up context, so that now every time you see it could be anything. It could be like a salamander. You could tie that to New York. Does New York and salamander have anything to do with each other? No, but maybe you want to show that it does, and so you create that connection, and then throughout the movie you can repeat that motif if you want. But like, that's a lot. That takes work, right? It takes a lot of work to set that up. Also, this is a weird. Hold on, let's do this. Let's get rid of this one. We only have 4 options today. Are we going to a vote? I don't know. I don't know if we go to a vote today. Are you guys voting on my Christmas card? All right, we can go to a vote. I'm happy with any of these. Although, no, wait, we only have 3 options because these 2 are the same. Which one of these between 2 and 3? Maybe we do these? I like the lighting on that one better. Okay, we're narrowing it down. I'm narrowing it down. We have 3 votes. We'll do this right in chat. Okay, I realize these are all very similar. Maybe not very, but they're pretty similar. It could be worse than using a color filter. Oh, gotcha, yeah. But I mean, I think a lot of this stuff, though, like, the first person to do it, right, probably didn't create the stereotype. Or, but it's like, it's the second and third and 100th, right? Suddenly now the stereotype, right? Like, showing a Mexican person eating Mexican food isn't bad. But if it's like, now it's just always a guy eating a taco, like, that's super racist, and that's not good. Like, at some point, where's the, I don't know, it's a fine line, I think, between creating quick visual cues that are memorable and easy to recognize to communicate something basically without having to put in work, right? And you're basically creating a stereotype. It's a really tricky balancing act, and I think it was a while back somebody mentioned, like, this is, I think books do this really well. Like, they can come out of the gate with like a description that's very tropey. So like, you know, we have a big dumb brute or something, but then, you know, or you describe him as like a character as brutish, maybe a little fumbly, but then later in the story you can dig deeper into like, oh, he's actually really smart and he's kind and caring and he's not big and dumb, right? But like that initial read is going to tell you something, and then you can like go and like deconstruct those expectations, and like you can sort of add context, but like you don't always get that in like a single image, you know? That first read, you do kind of need to like communicate something. Otherwise, no one knows what they're looking at, right? It's just like, oh, there's a random person. Who is this? What are they? Who are they? Why do I care about them? Right? Well, I think there's been a lot of video games that have tried to do this in the past, where they have like kind of a generic character and nobody cares about them because they're completely uninteresting, and they're like, they could be anybody. And like, yeah, that's nice, right? You're certainly not stereotyping anyone, but you're also not drawing any interest because there's nothing unique about them, right? It's just like or maybe there is unique stuff, but it's a really tricky, it's a tightrope to walk. I think a lot of it depends on the format, right? If you have, I think in a books you get a, you know, you obviously I think can flesh things out better. In a single image, I think we do, unfortunately. Like pretty much every character design course probably out there is going to focus on silhouette and making a graphical read and trying to communicate something in like a quick glance of like, who is this character, right? And yet that's entirely relying on like pre-existing shape language, kind of. Maybe not pre-existing, but a lot of it's relying on this pre-existing stuff. Anyway, let's make a poll. Straw poll. 1, 2, 3. Which should be a Christmas card? I like how I said Christmas. We're going to put that up for 5 minutes. Okay, I put a straw poll at the top of chat. You can vote on whichever one. I don't know what one I want to work on. It could be any of these, honestly. My face is kind of in the way. I don't know. That'll work. I don't know how many of y'all are going to vote, but I am curious. Number 2 is winning. Number 1, number 3. See, number 1's tricky. I kind of like it, but I also... It's the least Christmassy, kind of. I mean, actually, it's kind of the most Christmassy because it's only the Christmas trees, but... 2 and 3? Okay. Yeah, 1 is weird. One I'm not sure is a good choice, but it's also the kind of the most interesting in some ways. 2 has story already. 3 is gonna be like, would be like a pretty picture, kinda. But I think it would still tell Christmas really well, and it'd be snowy. Gosh, I'm so torn. More people have voted for 3. I like 3, but it needs more focus. It does. There's a deer in here. Yeah, none of these are finished. The ceiling is a bit spooky. It is a bit spooky. Yeah, I mean, none of these are finished. These all are just very early sketches, and they'll be refined a lot. Haunted Christmas Cave, it could have been. No, it wasn't going to be, but it would just need a lot of render and cleanup, right? None of these images are final, right? At all. None of the compositions are final. They're just starting points. General directions to pursue. Number 3 is winning. I think we'll go with 3 then. We're only halfway through the vote. So we got some time. Looks like number 3 is going to win it, but we got some more time. If more people want to vote, you can do that. But I'm going to Google some snowy rocks. And then some reindeer. Maybe adding an Aurora Borealis to 3. We could do that. Laura, hello. Hope you're doing well. That's not a bad idea. I will say, though, I'm not a huge Aurora Borealis. I want to see it in real life. I'm sure it would be gorgeous. I've only seen a very faint glimmer of it from where I live, but you don't get much of it here very often. But I'm not a huge fan of painting like those like green skies, that kind of scene. It is beautiful though, but I don't know. Maybe we'll see. I might reserve the lighting for like Christmas lights. I might add some sort of Christmas lighting, some sort of green, red, white, or something in there to like some lighting effect. So, have you seen the pictures being posted everywhere from the past 2 nights? They're amazing. Of the Aurora? No, I have not. I have not seen that. But yeah, I imagine it would be pretty neat to see. Also, I just realized I'm dropping a bunch of frames. I don't know why. Don't know why. I think when I'm doing Google searches, it's lagging me. You wish you saw them for real, but it was cloudy where I'm at? Gotcha. Poll completed. Which should be a Christmas card? Which one? Which poll won? Number 3. Okay. Perfect. So what I'm going to do here is basically just blow this up. Or scale it up, I should say. Blow it up makes it sound like I'm going to explode something. No explosions in this painting. Go like that. This was at your sister's house? Let's take a look. Oh, that's gorgeous. Yeah, that's nice. I like that. That's subtle too, right? Like, I mean, it's subtle because it's over the horizon. It's not like this big thing in the sky. I like this better than most images that I see of the aurora. I feel like so often you see these stereotypical, you know, swooshy sky auroras that are just like the focal point. This is neat because it's kind of a backdrop to the trees. And you have these nice tree silhouettes, but then you still have this beautiful green glow along the horizon, which I think is really neat. I quite like that. Monster Cord says, little question, can you suggest a starting point to get better with light, shadow, foreground, background, etc.? To get better with light, shadow. So the way I work, I don't know if this is like an advice. Here, let me just turn my painting sideways so I can paint on it for a moment. It's gonna look funny, but that's okay. So I like to think in stages. I think if you can... So... I mean, I think with foreground, midground, background, the main thing is that when you're drawing, like if you're doing line work, and I don't know how you work, and I don't do lines, so, but if you're doing lines, I think the main distinction typically is like your background is going to be your brightest, right? Not very brightest in your painting, but like relative to your foreground, midground, background, right? And then you kind of have these stages, right? Your classic atmospheric perspective, right? That's basically what I've just created, right? So here's some atmospheric perspective. And if you think of it in stages like that, so first stage is to kind of break up your painting. It doesn't have to always be 3 lines or whatever. You know, maybe your painting looks like this, and you have a midground over here, and you have a background, you know, and you have a sky color. Maybe it's just 3 values. Maybe this one goes up to here. This one's gonna go like that, you know. Or maybe we do have this other one back here. I like those. But, you know, maybe you have a scene like this or something, you know? Or maybe this goes way down here, and you have little thingies there, right? So maybe this is your scene. This isn't lighting, though, right? This is sort of atmospheric perspective. There's not a lot of light happening in here. I like to start this way, because this, to me... So after lighting, right? So after atmosphere, I'm just gonna write like A, right? A up here, and then we're gonna work our way down. The next is like general ambient light. So I don't know what you call that. The next stage would be like your ambient light. That's where I start to distinguish between... I make things a little bit lighter. So I think of like a little bit of, you know, if this is rocks, maybe some of these rocks on top are going to be a little lighter, you know, than rocks on the bottom, right? And the way that I do this is, you have to be careful here, because if I take this color of gray, this new lighter color, it's darker than my next darkest gray, right? I'm not taking this and going super bright up here, right? I'm not doing that. I'm painting very light. So somewhere between this darkness and this darkness, I'm picking a somewhere in between color, and I'm putting that in here, right? So that's like, this to me is like the second stage of lighting. It's sort of like I'm, you know, if I have a material like snow, this is where I'm going to put it in, right? If I want a snow in here, I'm going to bring that up a little bit brighter. Yeah, basically that, right? Step A, then step A, ambient light. Yeah, atmosphere, then ambient light. And this is where I'll do like snow. You know, maybe this is like a dirt, and then there's snow on top of the dirt, and so I'll put the snow in here, right? This is like materials kind of. So again, but this shadow is still going to be darker than that shadow. And same thing back here. If I want to paint something back here, right? I'm not going to take a bright white and go back here. Nope. This bright white is reserved for the background, right? So you can almost think of each layer. The dark color that I have is the darkest it'll ever be. And then the next layer is the lightest that this darkest layer will be, right? So like layer 1, which is this dark layer, the darkest this dark layer will ever be is this color, right? I mean, technically I can go a little darker, but the darkest it'll ever be, layer 1 will never get darker than I started, but it'll also never get lighter than layer 2, right? Layer 2, I will never make this layer that bright. Actually, that's not true. I will only when I add light. But anyway, so for now, basically these are like ranges. These are like your value structure. So whatever you've established, sort of these, again, you don't have to have them dark to light. You can reverse them, do whatever, but this is not a bad time to like, you're basically establishing a value. And same thing back here. If I want to add a little bit of light, you know, maybe there's some light on top of these rocks, I can add some form. I can, you know, you can go in here. You can add some variety in your light and shadow. You know, you want to establish a little bit of ground plane. That's where you can do it too, right? Same thing here. If you want to establish some ground plane, you know, you can add that with your ambient light from on top, right? It's just a light, just very lightly in there. And then the next that I like to do... Oh yeah, so yeah, you can paint any... So yeah, you can reverse them. You could go dark in the background. Really, the goal here is just to have distinct shapes. And the reason I'm saying that... So like, So if you wanted to reverse them, I mean, with atmospheric perspective, sorry, I just spit everywhere. With atmospheric perspective, you can't reverse it, right? That's just how it works. But I guess I'm kind of flip-flopping and I'm kind of saying two separate things and I'm kind of mixing them together because most of the time you can mix them. But so in some ways, this is like, you know, this scene might be more like, now this is representing your light, right? I've kind of reversed, like I haven't talked about lighting yet. So in some ways, this is skipping a step. And I skip the step all the time, and I'll say, yeah, I can start with a black background. That's going to be a nighttime scene. We've got some light in the foreground shining on these trees. Like, this is a perfectly fine way to set up your scene. But that's kind of different because this now is actually our light, and in this scene we haven't added our light. We could add our light in the foreground just like this scene. Whoops. We could go like this, light in the foreground. And we could go, you know, you could do it with like if you wanted, you could do like a soft light or something, or you could literally just slap it in there, right? You could do that too, right? And that's actually now going to be very similar in that we have, you know, especially if all of this were in light and all of this were in light, you know, you'd actually end up with something kind of similar where the light is in the foreground but not the background. So relatively speaking, it's kind of darker in the background. Like it's kind of the same thing if you were to do both steps fully, but I actually think this stage over here is a better way to do it for a beginner. You know, do your direct light last, and it can be a little overpowering. You know, you can do a little bit heavy-handed here. I probably would go about the same brightness as the sky, maybe a little lighter even. You probably could go a little lighter. This could even be a little grayer if you wanted. I mean, you really have a lot of wiggle room here. But yeah, or like underwater where you have like a spotlight, but you can't see in front of your flashlight because it's dark and there's a lot of atmosphere, right? But this is kind of, you know, there's different value structures you can use, but generally speaking, and some, you know, I actually like to do this stage quite early with my big block-ins of light. I technically do it before I do my ambient light, but the reason I advise this way is because I think the lighting can get a little bit too much for people when you're first starting. I think it's nice to kind of leave it out and do mostly atmospheric scenes. And then the lighting can kind of be heavy-handed a little bit. And then you can, basically this is, a scene like this, the nuance is in the shadows, right? This is where if you want nice colors and interesting stuff happening, it's taking place in here, right? It's not happening in the light. Some people like to do it the opposite, right? Comic books, that's the opposite. You have black shadows. If something's in shadow, it's black, and the light is where everything happens, right? So this is like you have an option. There's different way of workings, and it's going to get different effects. But I think this is a good way to start. You know, and then of course when you do color, you can try to make your lights warm. Your non-light, your shadows can be cool. So in practice, that might look something like this, where you do like you start with like a blue, gray or something for your colors up here. Maybe I'm gonna do like I don't know, let's do a different type of scene, something like this where we have like a pillar here, and then I'm gonna do a light background, and then a medium. I'm kind of, again, I'm not layering it nicely, but hopefully you'll see what I'm doing. And then I have a medium color back here. Actually, let's make this a little darker. Maybe there's some towers or something back here. This is going to be like a, I don't know, some sort of thing, right? So basically, once you have, you can spend some time on this stage, you know, but once you have some sort of theme established, maybe it's like a, you know, just very simple gradient, right? Maybe some more stuff back here. Maybe some rocks or something, right? It's a very, very simple scene. But then if you want light, this is where, like, because these are kind of bluish. Hey, Froster, and hello. Also, thank you for the follow, Gamechamorph. Hope you're doing well today. But then if you were going to add light, right? Maybe you add your light, there's going to be like a little sliver of light coming in the foreground and background. I know I'm kind of keeping it very samey here, but maybe I want to make this light a little bit warmer, like an orange. And maybe you want to add it on, you know, oh, not that. Like a glow dodge, and so you're like, I want orange light. Oops, hold on. Let's undo this for a second. What just happened? New layer, glow dodge. I'm just gonna plop in some orange light. Maybe you want light like this, or maybe you want to brighten up the background and you want a sunset, right? So you bring in some light in here. You know, that can look really nice. And obviously then you have to fix some of your stuff, right? You need to fix your... Oh. You know, I also wouldn't use... I'd use like a hard edge brush for this. I wouldn't use soft. Maybe for your light you can use soft edge. But, you know... And then maybe you bring in some light like that. But you're kind of... You know, so you have a warm and cool established light source. You know, obviously your lights can bounce around here now, right? This is, again, kind of like another ambient light layer. You know, you're bouncing some light around. You know, that light's going to get on the walls. But again, I'm not going this bright, right? I'm going a little bit bright. I'm taking, like, this layer and just lightly... I'm taking that orange, but I'm going just a little bit lighter in here because it's going to be that bounce light. Right? And so you can get some pretty nice scenes like this. You know, you have your light source, you know, if you have a character in here. The main thing is that anytime you put something in your scene, like a character or whatever, this character is going to be the darkness. Typically, I start with the darkness of the layer that he's standing on, right? So if you have a character standing on a layer, its feet, wherever its feet are, whether it's a tree or a character or whatever, it's going to be of the layer of the darkness of the layer that it's on. So if it's on this background layer, that's kind of this darkish blue, that's how dark the tree's going to be, right? If it's really far back and it's like this really light gray, let's go over here, this really light gray, it's going to be back here. And of course, you're going to make it smaller accordingly, right? If you want a tree up here, it could be up here. Right, there's a tree. Right? Maybe there's a tree back here, and you can just barely see it because it's sort of being washed out by the... Oh, maybe I want to make it a little darker up here so it can contrast. Right? But, like, that's kind of the idea, is you're using the colors that you already have. And then from there, you can add back in some, you know, if you want to do materials, you can, you know, add some ambient light in here. If this is rocks, you can grab that layer back here and lightly paint it on. But really, I'm doing those same steps. If that makes sense. That's how I would do it. And for the colors themselves, you can really get away with pretty much any color when you're doing it this way, because the light is being the bully here, as Mark Obuchi says. The light is basically just going to be really strong. Obviously, not all light sources are really strong, but if you're using a really strong light source, that basically means that your shadows is where that nuance is going to be, right? If you want, like, red in the shadows, put red in the shadows. Just don't pick a red and put any red in the shadows, right? Because if you check your values, right, you want to pick a red that is in this darkness, right? So if I put a little dark spot up here, let's pick a red that is that dark. Maybe it's more saturated. That's pretty good, right? So then this red can work in the shadows, right? You can put red up here if you want. Maybe you want some more nuance in there and you want to bring some purple in there too. And so you bring a dark purple in, you know, some purple, some reds, maybe some blues, you know, and you want to just play maybe some more purple or red, you know, but you don't want to go too, this is where opacity is nice. You don't want to go too light. So like if you pick a light color, you don't just want to put it light, but if you lightly put the light color in there, you're kind of mixing with your other colors. And you can get, you know, same thing back here. If you want like a purple, mix the purple into the existing blue, right? Because that blue is a cool color. And so by mixing that purple into it, or this, maybe you want like this kind of purple, right? Instead of picking this purple, which you could do, it's the same value, I'm going to mix it into the existing color and it's going to be like a grayish color. And that'll work, right? Same in the foreground, right? Same color of purple, I'm just mixing it into a darker color. and it's already darker because the foreground is darker, right? So I'm mixing this same purple that I had here into the foreground, but I'm pressing lightly, so there's a lot of mixing happening. And that's a nice way to do colors because, again, same purple, haven't changed it, but I'm just lightly painting on top of what's already there. And it kind of works, right? Because the values are already there, and so as long as I'm mixing light enough and I'm not overpowering it, right? I'm not trying to knock out the values. I'm trying to keep the values, you know, relatively the same, or at least visible, right? I want you to be able to tell that there's stuff in the background. I don't know if that helps, but that's kind of how I kind of just went through the whole process there. But really, that first stage of blocking in values and trying to stick to them, right? So when it does come time to color, you can do whatever you want in here, so long as it's relatively, you know, you're staying in that value structure, right? You're not going like this, but if you want to bring in a random color like this, well, that's not bad, right? That fits. This doesn't, right? This is too bright. But if you go a little bit lighter, that fits. What color do we have here? We have a bright green. Still works, right? It's maybe not ideal, but if you were painting green rocks, like, you know, what do you call it? Like an emerald or something, or that's not the right word. I know emeralds. What's the other thing? I don't know. But anyway, if you were going to paint another material, right, this green could totally work. And it works in your atmospheric perspective. Also, most of the time when you do have like a blue sky or something, that blue is going to work its way into the other colors, right? And I'm just using a big opaque brush and I'm just kind of fogging it in, you know, just very normal layer brush, just lightly painting on top, letting those colors mix. That's the thing about lighting, and is typically you want your values and your colors to mix, right? If you have a white sky, it's going to mix with all the layers behind it, you know? If you have a pink sky or a red sky, it's also going to mix with the layers behind it, right? And so starting out this sort of very, you know, hard-edged, big, clear shapes lets you add in those layers of atmosphere and fog or whatever you want to add. You can just start lightly filling your scene with that light and kind of letting it bounce around. And it kind of works. Like, you know, obviously you can overdo it, right? But you're not going heavy-handed like that. You're just very lightly pressing, just sort of letting it be a fog that kind of permeates the scene. You're almost thinking in terms of light, or at least that's how I try to do it, right? So a scene like this, again, you can add a yellow in here if you want, but just don't go too bright because that wasn't our scene. That's not how we established it. Now, you could go bright in here, right? You could make this a yellow light. You could make this, you know, a lot of people will do this right along the edges. They'll take like a bright color, and then they'll take another bright, like a warm color, but that's a little brighter, and they'll go like that. So you'll have these very warm bits of light. But again, I'm doing that because these were already my brightest things in my painting, and so I can keep them bright. I could, alternatively, I could go like a bright purple, right, and go, or a bright pink and make pink light. Now that might look funny, but it'll work, and it'll adhere to that structure that you've already established. And similarly, one thing you'll see me do a lot is sometimes I'll start with a simple block in like this, but then I'll just start making additional shapes. And if I pick a dark color, and I just picked right for my painting, this is going to look like it's a floating object, right? I just made a dark shape in the middle of my scene. Why does it look like it belongs there, right? Well, that's because it's the value of the foreground, right? If I picked this value right here, and I put it over here, well, now it looks like it's floating in the midground, right? Obviously, if I made it bigger, it would just look like it's a bigger object, but it still kind of looks like it's in the midground, right? You can use things like overlap. Overlap's important, you know, to make it look like it's behind the object. But scale's also, the scale's the most important, right? Make it look like it's the right scale. You know, this object could be floating back here, and you know it's floating and you know its distance because it's small, you know. If you took another layer like back here, I'm just taking this blue and making it a little lighter. you know, now you've got some floating objects back here. And they get progressively lighter. You know, maybe you want like a mid-ground object or character. But sometimes you run into something like this, where you can't see this character. So what do? Well, maybe they have dark hair, right? Maybe they're just in shadow a little bit more, and so you give them a little bit extra, right? And so their feet are still kind of firmly planted on the ground, right? I'm not drawing them like this. I mean, I could, but I've kind of made a gradient to make them sort of stand on the ground seamlessly, and I think that's a nice way to do it. But yeah, really contrast is the thing you've got to watch out for. You know, if you're going to add a character in here, don't just like slap them anywhere, but like, you know, maybe you want a character to be in light, and so you put a couple characters in light, and maybe they have some shadow in here too. You know, so sometimes it's a lot of it's like is this how real life would work? Not really, right? Real life doesn't look like this, but you're simplifying, and technically, once you start changing materials, you know, maybe I want this to be a little lighter, you know, because there's going to be snow on here, right? And maybe this stuff is a little lighter because there's going to be snow in here. Oh, I didn't go very bright there. Right. And once you start layering on more and more sort of advanced techniques, and, you know, this is going to be a little lighter. Let's also make it bluer, you know. Pretty soon you start getting closer to reality where you have lots of values, lots of colors, lots of light. It's not just as simplified objects and forms, but you have actual nuance in here. This character might have some pink in them, on them. You know, you have these shadows here. This character has some light material. They also have some really dark material. And in shadows, it's, you know, they're going to have certain spots. But again, you're still not typically going to go like dark here, right? That wouldn't really look good. I mean, you could, but you have to be clever about it, kind of. But mostly, you're trying to keep your things simplified. Anything extra is sort of like a choice. It's an artistic choice. You know, maybe I'm outlining some characters, adding a little bit of shadow here. Also, don't forget things like cast shadows, right? If you're adding characters or objects in your scene, you know, you might need to change your composition a little bit. Also, there's things like this where, you know, maybe the top of it's a little lighter, and maybe the bottom of it where it doesn't get shadow is a little darker, right? And so you start adding variety. But again, the variety is limited, right? This is still the darkness of the foreground, right? And this light part is still the darkness of the foreground, right? There is no, I'm not adding like this up top, right? So I think you gotta use a light hand, a lot of layering and opacity. Don't go heavy-handed. Anyway, that's my ramble. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. That's my tips for if you're a beginner in like light. And honestly, the main thing with light is just values. Make sure every shape is readable. If you're gonna add a character, and you know, you don't have to paint from this perspective, you can paint from a different perspective. But if you're gonna add like a character on a street and you're painting from down, you know, from top view, you're still gonna need your character. You know, if your character's wearing a dark cloak, here's a character, you can't paint a dark street, right? Then you won't be able to see them. So you need to do something to make sure that they're readable behind your street. You know, you can do something like this, and then the street can get lighter as they go further back, right? Or maybe there's some, you know, maybe they're holding a light, or maybe they're wearing a white hat or something. You know, they need something to be able to like read against the thing that you're painting. And so as long as you're making your shapes clear, right, and you're using scale and overlap and perspective, you're probably going to be okay, right? Okay, anyway, back to this. This is the one we were painting on. Number 3. We haven't even started yet. That was a good tangent, if I do say so myself. Okay, this is not the right size. Let's go with that big. This is going to be a Christmas card, so I'm going to need to make it big enough for print. It is going to be painterly, so I don't need it to be super crisp, because it, you know, this stuff can be a little pixely looking anyway. Doesn't need to be pristine. Thank you so much. Explained so well, especially for being so in depth. It helped. And yeah, I mean, there's different ways of working. A lot of it does come down to how you want to work. If you want to start, also not every scene needs to think about lighting that early. Sometimes, if you're doing like line work, you can think about your just general composition, layout, and stuff. The tricky part is when you start adding light. Sometimes you run into this thing where like your character is against your sky and your character is in bright light, but your sky is bright. And so now you have bright against bright. And like, what do you do? Right? How do you like, if I had a character in this scene and he was standing in here, right, on a rock. This is totally how I draw characters, by the way. Right, here's our character standing on a rock. Like, he might be in shadow, but no, actually, this rock is in light, so our character's actually in light. Well, the problem is that now you can't see our character because he's in light, and the light is against light. And, like, that's a problem. And this is something where the way I work, which is typically starting with values, is I'm going to avoid that. Or I'm going to be like, you know what, if I'm going to have a character here, let's put a big rock behind him so that now you can see our character, right? And if you're not thinking about lighting in your sketch phase, you oftentimes run into this sort of like, it's almost like there's a math term where it's like the coloring squares. I don't know if you're aware of that. Some problems, basically the way you can work towards solving them, I don't exactly know what this applies to because I don't know that much about math, but sometimes you'll have like a complex grid of things, and you're basically trying to be like, okay, I need to color these squares such that no two squares of the same color are touching, right? So you might be like gray and red and blue, and then you can be like, okay, well, this one's gonna be red again because it's not touching the other one, and then this one could be blue, and this one could be red, but wait, this could be red too, actually. And like, hey, look, I can color this pretty much actually all in two colors, right? And if you can get away with that, great. But sometimes you need to add other values, right? Sometimes you can't just layer things black on top of white and white on top of black. Like sometimes you need clever solutions or gradients. Maybe if half your character is light and half your character is in dark, or is in light and shadow, maybe you need a gradient that goes the opposite way, right? Maybe you need a gradient that goes like this, so that your whole sky is like, it starts dark, but then it gets lighter as it goes across, so that by the time it pops out over here, there's enough contrast. Because if you didn't do that, there wouldn't be as, maybe there wouldn't be as much contrast over here. And so your solution was to make a gradient, right? Oh, this looks like a flag, by the way. But so there's kind of this like checkered patterning effect where you're just trying to make things read. Things, if you have a shape in the foreground, like this rock, it needs to be readable if you want it readable. You can obviously choose to make it not readable, and you can merge shadows and you can do all that. But you've kind of got to be... It can be a little tricky if you're starting with lines, but it totally works. This is where a lot of people they'll take their sketch and they'll duplicate it, and they'll make a whole bunch of different sketches, and they'll do different value passes, which the value pass is basically what I was doing. Whoops, I've lost my image. But the value pass is the black and white phase, basically, where you're just layering values. And that's where like you can play with different solutions and, ask yourself, what's the focal point? Let's start with that. Make sure that my focal point has clear contrast from the thing behind it. And then as you work out, if you run into issues, you can just make sure that those issues are in your non-important parts. Like, oh, I can't put this rock and this rock to have contrast because they're both in shadow. Well, that's okay. I'll just merge them together because who cares? It's a rock, But this character, well, I need to solve this right away, right? Because this is my focal point. Speaking of which, let's let's draw. Let's paint some. I haven't done any painting on this. Okay. So yeah. But yeah, those are things to think about. The way that I work is not the only way you have to work, obviously, and so, but the concepts are pretty universal with light and how, you know, thinking about values, thinking about contrast. Maybe this one has its face going here. See, that's kind of what I'm doing now, is I'm trying to figure out the silhouettes of things. It kind of looks like a moose. It's not supposed to be a moose. It's supposed to be a reindeer. I don't know how to paint reindeer. I mean, I'm looking at a reference, but... that's kind of reindeer-ish. Just trying to get the shapes. The shapes looking kind of shapy, making them readable. And see, even this, like, even when I'm reworking a scene, I'm kind of doing the same thing. Like, I'm still starting out with a big silhouette. I'm starting out very painterly, very blocky. You know, I could be doing this with the lines too. But the rendering phase, right, the color phase of this is pretty much the same. I start out with a blocky form, you know, try to do my design, figure out how I want things to look. Also, I realize I might actually be painting a moose. I don't actually know what animal this is that I'm looking at. I thought it was a reindeer, but I could be wrong. But yeah, so like sometimes it's just starting up with design, right? And this is where I'm trying to design my shapes to make them look good. And then from here, I'll do the same thing I just did. It's like, oh, well, this moose or this animal, right? Maybe they have a brighter coat, so I'm going to add some ambient light on them. I'm not even worried about sunlight yet, you know? I'm just like, what if I just change the material of this coat to be a little lighter? And again, I'm not going crazy bright, right? I'm just very subtly making it lighter to give it some form, maybe. You know, maybe that has a white belly, and so I come down here. But then I'm like, oh, wait, look at this. We have a contrast issue. This part right here is weird. What's happening there, right? And so maybe I darken its belly there. Also, there's a gap here. That way you can tell its belly goes around. But what if I add, you know, light behind it, you know? That way there's an overlapping shape. The learning curve is overwhelming, but not going to improve without going through that. Yeah, I mean, I think just taking it simple, starting black and white if you're doing colors, or yeah, if you're doing colors, start in black and white. Sounds counterintuitive because you think, well, that's not colors. But start with the values, you know? Start with just making things clear. If, you know, there's a lot of wisdom out there, like if your painting doesn't read in black and white, it's not going to read in color, right? Even color paintings look good in black and white. There are a few exceptions, but mostly, if you're a beginner, those exceptions are not relevant, right? Your painting, focus on values first, you know, and again, different scenes, and one of the things you'll know, or you'll learn, is that, like, different types of scenes. Did you trace that guy? No. I have a reference over here, though. Just looking at him. No tracing, but it's pretty much one-to-one. This might even be AI. I actually have no idea. It doesn't quite look right. It looks off to me, but he looks really accurate. Oh, that's good. Yeah, I'm not trying to be super accurate right now. I'm just trying to make a clear silhouette. If I have to change things, I will. You know. Like, I don't think I like the foreground. Yours looks better? No way. I don't think so. But some of the things like, you know, what's this leg doing? I don't really know. But it's a graphical shape. And I think it can stay pretty graphical. But yeah, no, I think drawing definitely can be overwhelming. Or painting or drawing. There's a lot to juggle. It's a lot of small, simple things. You know, on their own, they're not that hard, but it's combining them all together can be quite a chore. So yeah, but you know, it is a lot of just keeping at it, self-critiquing. I find that understanding why things work really helps to make those choices. Maybe I know some people I think have probably learned just fine not learning that. I think Hawaii Artworks, he's another streamer. He does a really good job. I think he has a very similar mentality. He works with a lot more line work. His process is totally different. But this sort of like thinking about light and shadow as light and shadow, it's not just like it's like trying to understand, oh, well, here's where the light's hitting. So this is going to be a little lighter and this is going to be a little darker, and sort of having an understanding of the physics behind it, right? There's like, oh, the physics of light, and here's how color works. And, you know, I will say there's a lot of things that I'm take as shapes. Well, no, as like the shapes and the form and the structure, I think that is pretty well ingrained in his head, and I think it's pretty well ingrained in mine. So like if I'm drawing a box, I'm at the stage where I'm pretty okay with being like, here's a box, right? It's floating above us. We can see the bottom of it. And so I don't really have to think about like, so I can pretty much just think about like, where is it in the scene? It's pretty close. Let's make it darker, right? Because close stuff is dark so far. And if I want to add light on it, and oh, well, the bottom side is going to be a little bit darker because the light is coming from at the top. So let's adjust the foreground to be a little bit lighter than that, right? Oh, it has a layer of snow on it. Okay, great. Let's add a layer of light snow, right? But we can't see a lot of the snow because we're looking up at the box. So only the stuff really peeking up over it, right? And then there's like, you know, if I were to add like a shadow in here, that's going to make it look like there's like a hole in the box or something, right? Now, it doesn't have to go all the way through. It could just go like that. But then maybe this part's going to get a little bit of light on it from the top, right? And so you're thinking more in terms of light. I'm not really thinking about how do I draw a hole. Oh, it needs to have this, the top side. A lot of that stuff I've done, right? I've done a lot of the work to understand how to draw, you know, cylinders or like a doorway in perspective, right? To understand that this top part needs to be seen, right? A lot of that stuff is sort of ingrained. I've done a lot of that work, so I can focus on light and shadow a little better. I don't have to think about like, how do I draw the thing I'm trying to draw as much. I mean, I still do, but it frees me up to think a lot more about these other things like light, color, shadow, composition. But yeah, it's definitely a long process, and there's never really any end to it, because every time you learn something new, there's different materials, different objects, and like there's just so much. I usually try to start thinking about light and shadow as graphical elements. Yeah, that's a good way to do it. A lot of it comes down to like, what do you want? You know, I think if you're doing like environment art and you're trying to do these, you know, big moody conceptual landscapes of like, here is this scene, it's gonna be a dark alleyway. Also, this song is super loud. Let me change. That was the person who rated us. Their art just came on screen briefly. Let me just skip forward. There we go. But yeah, it kind of depends on what you're doing. I find that if you're doing concept art and you want to paint like a dark alleyway, starting with sort of these graphical shapes is useful. But if you have a very specific story and a character and very specific design elements, a lot of times starting with line work's going to be useful. And it's hard to think about lighting when you're just trying to get your anatomy right. You know, like maybe just do the sketch first and think about the shading later. You know, it's really tricky. I think different ways of working. What I'm gonna say a theory, but it's more of just like it's more of a principle that I stand by, which is whatever you start with is gonna be the most important. If you start with clear light and shadow shapes, that's an indicator that you think light and shadow is the most important thing, right? It might not always be true, but it's probably going to be the strongest because it's kind of your foundational thing. Everything else that you do is going to go on top of it. And so whatever that first thing that you lay down, that has the ability to be the best it can be, and everything else has to conform, right? If I'm going to like, I don't know, pick a certain shape or a design or something, that maybe certain colors aren't going to work in the scene, right? Maybe the contrast is going to ruin the value structure. So now you've got to compensate on color and value because you've decided that you have a certain design already, right? But if you start with value, then maybe design's going to have to you know, like if I want a character right here, right in the shade, in shadow, in black, I cannot add him. I cannot put a character here in the shadow wearing dark clothing if I want you to see him. I have to change something about my composition and my lighting, right? And so if you start with your composition and lighting, then you don't have to like give any leeway when you try to make those choices later, right? But if you started with your character sketch, well, now you can change your lighting around that to make it work, right? But again, it kind of depends on whatever's most important. What do you want the most wiggle room on? Oftentimes, my wiggle room is on the story or the, you know, design. It's on something, right? The wiggle room is not on the lighting and the mood. The mood and the lighting are like my number one thing that I start with. So it kind of just depends. There's no right way of working. Let's put a little house up here. But see, I do get to do this, right? Because I can play around with, you know, I'm not too adamant about what it is I'm painting sometimes. Like, I still want the vibe to work. So, like, what if I put a little house up here with a chimney? Very precarious. Some lights. No, I want my shapes to... I could go... there. Little lights up there. And there. Whoops. Some snow on the top. Just a tiny little bit of ambient light to describe that form. That's another thing. Like, I guess I am juggling like a madman. I'm doing a lot of juggling acts right now. Like when I add this line up here, I'm kind of describing the form with a line, right? I'm just using a single line saying, here's the top. You know, it's almost like I have a shape, and I'm saying this shape is a cylinder. And so I'm adding a line to say, this is a rounded shape at the top, right? This is the shape at the top of the rim of this cylinder, right? Here's this line, but I'm only drawing that front face. I'm only drawing that front face, right? There's a lot of like sometimes there's just subtle, it's all, I guess another framework that I like to think of art in is just like communication. And so accuracy isn't really my goal. Like I know enough about construction to make it kind of accurate, but really it's more like, what can you see? Like, is this clear? If it's not clear, how do I make it more clear? Well, I could add a line here, or I could add a line on top to make it very clear that this is like that. I could also add like fog back here to make this lighter in the background. That way that object stands out, and maybe that fog comes down here, right? That's another way to do it, right? There's lots of ways to make this object clear. By the way, I watched a video today. It was pretty good. Should I share it in the Sunday Art? Yeah, you could. Yeah, you can share a video in the Sunday Art channel. We didn't watch anything last Sunday, but yeah, I'll try to this Sunday. But yeah, I think thinking in terms of light and clarity have helped me a lot. Because then if I run into a problem, it's like, so, you know, what is the problem? It's not clear. How do I make it more clear? Well, I have this I can change. You know, maybe it's a scale issue. Maybe it's a lighting issue. Maybe it's a contrast in some way and color, texture, or something, right? Like, there's all these different things that I can have control over that will change how clear it is, you know? A little snowy house off in the... Nah, maybe not. I don't know if I want a snowy house back there. I don't even know if I want a snowy house up here. Got you. Yeah, and maybe I did. Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm making myself clear, but it's... And I guess this also specifically applies to anything that I think you would call visual communication. So design, illustration, that kind of thing. There's definitely types of art where that's just not going to be a helpful way of thinking about it, because clarity isn't always the goal. I honestly don't know what metrics some artists use. I think some, because like in my head I have these sort of metrics, right? These sort of gold standards that I want to achieve. Clarity is one of them, right? So what that means, clarity of my message, of whatever it is I want to say. Not everything has to be clear in my image. Sometimes it's fine, you know, the point can be unclear intentionally. But if I have a point that I want to make, like this is supposed to be a nice Christmas scene, well, it should say Christmas, right? You should take away Christmas from this. If it doesn't scream Christmas yet, then I haven't made it clear enough, right? If I wanted to paint a reindeer and I want it to say reindeer, which it hopefully says, then it shouldn't say moose, right? Not yet. Right now it might say moose, but it should say reindeer in a bit. And so like those are things, and like how do I do that, right? So it's not so much how do I paint an accurate reindeer. Not all reindeer are clearly visible, right? You might have a reindeer from one angle that's really hard to tell it's a reindeer. That has nothing to do with how well I painted it, right? And this is, I think that was one of my realizations, sort of probably just like a handful of years ago, that was kind of changed the way that I think about art entirely. Like, it's not, accuracy is so unimportant. Like, there's so many things in real life that are just hard to tell what they are, right? There was a scene, so every single day that I walk to work at night, because I work nights, like during night, I used to walk to work, and there was always this car parked, and every day I'd walk by, I'm like, oh my gosh, their headlights are on. Is there a person in there? I don't want to like walk up next to a car when there's a person in there. Like, that's creepy. Like, you know, that's weird, you know? And so I would like try to avoid them. And then every time I'd pass them, I'd realize the car's headlights weren't actually on. There was a light from a building out of sight shining directly in path of the car. And when I'm approaching from a certain angle, it looked like that car's headlights were shining forward. And that's all I could see of the light. And it was a really weird optical illusion that made it look like this car's headlights were on. But every single day, my brain was like, car's headlights are on. They weren't. And that, if I were to paint that scene exactly as it was, you would not know what's happening, right? You would say car's headlights are on. Well, I don't want to communicate that. I want to communicate how it actually is, right? I wanted to communicate, like, I wouldn't put that light there. I would reposition the light to make it more clear, because real life is confusing. It can tell you the wrong thing. It can make you jump to conclusions. Or you can look at something and not... There's a great subreddit called Confusing Perspective, which is things like, you know, 2 people or 3 people in a photo, but one of them is wearing the same color shirt as another, and one of them looks like they have 3 arms or something, and you're like, what is happening with, like, the contrast? It's weird. Like, you're not sure what you're looking at. Like, that's a real photo. It doesn't mean it's good. It's terrible. It's miscommunication on, you know, like, if I were to paint that scene, I would have to change things, right? Actually, we could even do that. This is a really fun exercise, by the way. I realize I'm going on a major tangent here. Sometimes there's some mildly not safe for work stuff here, but you know, first image in the subreddit. It's a giant, I don't even know what it is. What is this? Some sort of plane jet engine. It looks crazy. But anyway, it looks like it's sitting on this bucket, right? How? This whole thing is on a bucket? Also, like, what the heck is with this guy? Is he standing? How is he standing? Is he huge in the background? Like there's some weird stuff happening, right? Like, this just happens to be... There's a tangent, right? In art, we have a term for this. We call it tangents. And we avoid them. Why do we avoid them? So that we don't get stuff like this, right? Real life is full of tangents. Our brain's pretty good at most of the time at figuring out what the heck's going on. But every once in a while, you end up with these weird things in real life that just confuse the heck out of your brain. And this is not good. If I were to paint this scene from this photo, I would change it to go like that, right? I would make it overlap, right? I would get rid of whatever this line is, because that's confusing, right? If I wanted something dangling down, I would make it cross in front of the shadow. That way you can see it in front, right? I wouldn't put it right on the edge, right? They're basically just little tangents. And there's stuff like this all over the subreddit, and I think it's great. Here's another example with hands. I thought it was funny. These are the first time I've seen this. It looks like they're holding hands, but like his arm is going behind his shirt. His arm is behind his... But you can't see it, right? Because the values are the same, right? And so what you actually see is it looks like this is his arm, but it's not. His arm's going behind him, right? And this guy's arm is in light. And so, like, this stuff, I love it because this is an example of you don't want to draw this scene accurately, right? This scene is not... Like, they are so in love, right? Yeah, but like, this is... I love this because this is the type of thing that we do all the time accidentally when drawing. And real life is no better. And so many people are like, oh, I want to get this face to look just right. And they're like, why does it not look good? Well, because it sucks. Like, not your drawing, but like, even in the photo, it's not super clear. Just because you know what something looks like, you know, if he were in a yellow shirt, this would not be a problem at all, right? You would immediately understand, not that he would ever be wearing a yellow shirt, but you would immediately understand what's happening. Actually, maybe you wouldn't, because now the background would be confusing, because that's orange, and it's, right? But if you were in a yellow rain jacket, you'd have no issue knowing that they're not holding hands. But anyway, I love this because this is like, it's just a nice reminder. This entire subreddit is great, but it's just a nice reminder that just because you draw something completely perfectly to the reference doesn't mean it communicates what you want it to. And sometimes I look at something and I genuinely don't know what I'm looking at. And actually, that's one of the fun things, is like trying to figure it out. Like, how is this possible? Oh dear. I just saw one. There's a lot of funny political ones, but here's another one. It looks like he's nailing a spike into the back of her head. It's a little grim, but it obviously he's not. There's a wall here, but like it's just funny. Like I don't know. I love these photos. Yeah. I absolutely love this entire subreddit just because it's just such a good reminder. Here's an anatomy one. Like that's confusing. Oh yeah, I saw that one. That's great. But see, that's intentional though, and I think stuff like that's where like you can do this stuff intentionally, and it's great because you do understand what you're seeing, but also you kind of understand what the gag is. But like if you did this in an image, you'd be like, this is a terrible, like this is almost like it's so uncanny. You're like, this is a foot. No, wait, it's a hand. What's happening? You know? But like there's these little subtle cues. Yeah, right. The whole thing is well, and also the fact that the hand is on the foot, and like that's a really hard position to be in, right? If there was a bigger gap here between the arm and the foot, right? Then it would, I think it would, this might be photoshopped. It might be. I have no idea, but it also could be real, right? But you'd have to try. My hunch says it may not be photoshopped, but I think the person tried to make it confusing, right? You take an arm, you bend it down by the knee, right? You bring the leg up, and it's intentionally a weird angle. But either way, a knee joint. Oh, is it a knee joint? It might be photoshopped. I don't know. It might be. A lot of this stuff probably is, but sometimes they're not, and it's just, you know, confusing. Sometimes it's just confusing perspectives, and I think it's great. I think the best ones are when it's done clearly unintentionally. There was one I really liked on that subreddit with like a girl holding a bag of candy or something. Let me see if I can find it. I think it's in the top images. Top. I'm not going to look too hard for it. But yeah, there was like a girl in a field holding a brown bag of candy, but the field behind her was brown, and it just made her legs look super pencil thin because half of her leg was being taken up by the bag, and it made it look like the background. And it's like, that stuff happens all the time in art. And so sometimes, especially with line art, right? You do your line art where you're not thinking about values, and then you color the line art the things that the colors that you think they should be, and they are the colors that you think they should be. And so that thought process is very logical, but when you get to the end, you haven't ever at one point thought about the overall value structure, right? Because you were only thinking about, here's the lines, here's what exists, and here's the colors. And this is where beginners get into problem, because that thought process is not good, right? That's not, if you just do lines, then you do colors, you're not accounting for contrast and value clarity, right? And it's, yes, this one, posing with popcorn. I love this image because it's just like, I could see myself if I were painting this. Here, let me just copy the image. I could see myself doing an image And the drawing would be fine, right? If you were to trace the lines on this, so here's the bag of popcorn, right? There's nothing about this that is inherently wrong in the drawing, right? I think it could be very clear. But if instead of a bag of popcorn, it was a bag of, I don't know, something that was red, right? And there was lighting to it, right? That would be fine, right? Something with like, oh, here's some polka dot bag, right? And the bag has shadow and light. Like, that would be fine. And your brain wouldn't be like, oh my gosh, what a weirdo. But the second you have popcorn in there that's the same color as the background, right? It's just, it breaks your brain. And I don't, yeah, these are great. And there's so much that you can take away from this stuff because it's like, we've all done it. And anyway, I think I've made my case that just simply depicting something as realistic doesn't make it clear. Clarity is different than realism. And sometimes you can have clear realism, but other times you do things like color grade things and change things to make it more clear. Like, you know, we saw in that early example of the color grading the James Bond movie. Where, like, that's their goal of making something clear from a story point of view. Now, it might make it ugly, but it also probably, I think it makes it clear. Even if it has other issues with it. Okay, so what am I doing here? Let's add a little Christmas tree. A little Charlie Brown tree. A little old Charlie Brown tree. Why is it plugged in? No one knows. Maybe it shouldn't be plugged in. Nah, it can be plugged in. I realize trees don't just light up on their own. Maybe we put the cords down here and they're all plugged in. And it's a movie set. Or maybe I just leave it off for now. That way I can think about it. Okay, what's going on back here, though? That's the question. Maybe we could go like that, a little archway. I've heard people refer to these kinds of optical illusions as forced perspective before. Yeah, I think forced perspective can also be another thing a little bit. Like, I think of forced perspective as a very particular type of those illusions. Like, there's the illusions where, like, you have, like, you've probably seen them before, where videos of, like, you have, like, a house scene of, like, an interior, and there's, like, you know, a Christmas ornament in front of the camera or something, and the person will, like, walk back into the scene and grab the Christmas ornament that you thought was a little thing hanging in front of the camera, but it was actually up against the wall. And then a chair that you thought was against the wall was actually, like, in front of the camera, and it was actually tiny. Like, have you seen those? That, to me, is more forced perspective, where, like, you're quite literally like, to me, forced perspective feels intentional, right? And you're intentionally playing with perspective. Sometimes I think you just have confusing perspective. I don't know if I would call it forced perspective. And like the popcorn girl, I don't think I would call the popcorn girl forced perspective. Because that's not to do with perspective, really. That's more of like a contrast issue. I think when you're getting, like, foreground confused with background and scale, I think forced perspective is typically a scale issue, right? Whereas the confusing perspective subreddit is full of like value contrasts and other things that have nothing to do with perspective really. It's really just like contrast issues, right? Like I think that that image with the hand, or that them holding hands, like I wouldn't call that forced perspective, but maybe it doesn't really matter what you call it. Sick Moose, love the placement of it too. Oh, thanks. Yeah, I'm trying to make like a Christmas scene. It's actually gonna be a reindeer, but right now it is just in silhouette form. But yeah, thank you. I appreciate it, Hut6. Forced equals intentional. Yeah, I think so. That's how my brain interprets that term. No, it's not your fault. It doesn't look like a moose. I mean, it doesn't look like a reindeer. It looks like, I even mentioned it earlier in stream. I think it does look like a moose, but I'm not worried about that right now. I can fix that later. Right now, I'm just trying to come up with some sort of composition. Maybe put like it's gonna be subtly Christmas, but not super Christmassy. It's snowy. Maybe some. It does, only tiny bit of white could help. Yeah, they have reindeer, they have a lot of white on them, don't they? Like up here. Yeah, I definitely will need to change some of the values. I need to get more references for reindeers too. I'm trying to think if I want to make this like a castle. Maybe there's a castle up here. That'd be kind of fun. Castle in perspective, or a little bit of 3-point perspective. Little fortress in the middle of nowhere. What else will you do for a Christmas theme? I think lights, mostly lights. Lights, it's gonna be subtly. It's mostly just like snow and lights. So maybe we'll put some, lightings in here. Some red and green lights or something. I'll decorate this town a little bit. The moose will have some lights on it. I say moose now. Now I'm saying moose. The reindeer will have some light. Just something like that. And it's gonna say, Merry Christmas. Oh. Right, it's gonna say a thing. It's just gonna be a very simple Christmas card. Nothing fancy. I want to keep it simple this year. I actually have an alternative idea for a Christmas card, but it's not going to be for everyone, and I don't want to reveal it yet. But I have an idea. Sometimes I make little custom cards. I'll do edits to things. Like if I know someone's really into cats, I might replace the moose with like a big cat or something. Like I'll do stuff like that kind of make it a little, especially if I'm gonna give it to like 2 people who I know are gonna be at the same place. Right? Like if I'm going to let's say I'm having Christmas dinner at my sister's or something, and I might give my sister and my mom a different one, because like my mom will be at my sister's and she'll see that card, and so it's fun to do like everybody gets a different one kind of thing. But mostly I just give out the same card, and I don't go super hardcore on it. I keep it pretty chill. Giant Christmas tree back here. We could do that. No, I think if we do a giant Christmas tree... Oh. I think if we do a giant Christmas tree... I was on the wrong layer. It should be over here. This probably would be best. Yeah, I think that would work. I mean, I don't want too many focal points, but I think this will work. But yeah, hope you're doing well, Hut. Hope your day is good. Hope everyone's day is good. And as always, if anyone's doing any art and would like to share, please do. I'd love to see what people are working on. Yeah, trying to add some snow up here a little bit. I'm getting to the point where I'm not sure I need to be putting the snow on the branches. That's probably not. That's a little too early, but that's okay. Okay, what's happening over here, though? Trying to think about composition. Maybe I make this a taller. We could go like that. I mean, maybe what this needs to be a little bigger. Again, I should probably figure out. Here, let's make a new layer. Stick it way at the top and just write. Sometimes I write Happy Holidays because it's shorter. Or do I do that? Or do I do 2 layers? Merry. I'm gonna type it out, probably. We'll just go like that. Yeah, we'll go like that. So this is less important. So the reason I did this is like, okay, now I'm figuring out like what's the shape here? Maybe there's a little like a window in here. A nice warm light. Something like that, maybe. Or maybe it's all just rocks. Maybe there's no lights anywhere. No, I think having a little bit of a something like that'll work. Little rocks in the foreground. Still not sure what to do with this big structure, though. We could do something really cool, I'm sure. Good night, all. See ya, Monster Cord. Thanks for hanging out. Thank you for being here. Hope you have a good rest of your night. But yeah, I'm kind of fiddling with this a little bit. Maybe I should also end. Sometimes you just need a little bit of a break. I do like this. Maybe actually that's kind of neat. Just sort of these tall spires. And of course we can add some, if these are spires, we can add some more snowy stuff up here. That's one thing I haven't done, right? Is add anything that could be snowy up here. Something like that. That. Maybe. Now the problem is that this feels like it's not, there's not a like sunset behind it, right? Initially when what I did, let me close some stuff. I have too many tabs open. Right? Initially I had, oh, probably shouldn't do that. See, I had like a backdrop here where it was very clearly there could be sunlight. So when I did like a glow dodge with an orange, right, it was very clear I could make that there's sunlight coming through. But now, I'm not sure about that. Right? Because do I actually want there to be light all the way across? I mean, maybe. I mean, it does look pretty good. Maybe there's still just big trees back here or something. Yeah, I definitely gotta think about it. Yeah, maybe there's trees up here. Why not? Well, because so if I was putting big shapes up here, then it's kind of weird, like just sort of like a structural thing, right? It feels like there's this thing that I've done a lot, which is I'll make like a bridge and I'll put a big old building on it, and it just doesn't have a good like foundational support feel. It feels like it's lopsided. Like, why am I putting all the heavy stuff right on the arch of the bridge? It just doesn't look like it kind of goes against all of my sort of like that clarity, that sort of your sensibility of, does this look like it would exist like this? And so I'm a little bit, I wanted to put some rocks up here, like a bunch of cliffs, but then if I don't cover it, if I cover it up, then it's hard to get that light shining through, you know? And so it's I don't want to, if I bring the cliffs up too tall, I'm not quite, it doesn't make a lot of sense down here. I mean, maybe I could block it off like that and I have like the light bouncing in. That could work. And then these could be up here. Something like that could work. Kind of like a little bit of a pass in here. And maybe that's what I'll do. I'll put some of that light down here. That's a solution. And then like a sliver. And maybe actually this could be a bit of a... like a building. Oh, I don't want to make my building with a face. That's very common for me to do on accident. Maybe a building up there. Or maybe just rocks. I don't know. Maybe I gotta sleep on it. It'll probably just end up being rocks. Rocks with snow. It's a moose. Actually, it's not a moose. It's a reindeer. I keep saying moose, but it's supposed to be a reindeer. I don't even know the own animal in my painting. It's funny that my brain just doesn't... it can't remember. They look so similar to me. But yeah, this is nice. I like it. Maybe this object back here, this tree, is a little bit funky looking. Maybe there's a little bit of a tree up here. Maybe there's some other trees up here too. Something like that, maybe? I don't want to go too spiky at the top, though. I do like that. I like it being pretty clean. Maybe we can put some lights up there, though. But again, this is gonna be... It's gonna have text up here, so I don't need to make it super clear. Something like that could work. Yeah, that's not bad. You got some lights. Got a little bit of a tree. Now it's just a matter of coming in here and figuring out what I want each thing to be and to paint it, basically, to just render it and detail. You know, some of it is already rendered, but most of it isn't. I think I gotta commit to the Christmas moose. The Christmas? Yeah, maybe. Nah, just some simple shape fiddling will be okay. Whoa, what's happening with this brush? That's weird. What is that? Scatter blur. I've never had this brush do this before. Is it a resolution issue? Why is it doing that? I mean, I like it. Oh, and I'm back after a meeting. Love it. Oh, Raychiana, thanks. Yeah, I'm actually getting ready to end here. We are... Obviously, this is not the final. I am going to work on this more. I don't know if I'm going to work on it. I might work on Saturday on stream, and I might just do, like... I might, you know... Basically, I'll just render it, and I'll, you know, get some more references and just polish it up a bit. I kind of like this blurriness, actually. It's kind of neat. It's not perfect. It's not ideal, probably. But I do like blurring stuff, and then I can tease out some of the shapes. Maybe later. Giving a softness to that foreground. I don't know. Maybe I'll regret doing this. But yeah, thanks for being here, everybody. I really appreciate it. Everybody who hung out. And Raychiana, I hope your meeting went well. Hope the meeting went well. Now the sky's kind of weird. Oop, it wasn't as fun as art. I mean, work meetings are never as fun as art time. Even when they're art work meetings. If it's for work, it's never fun. Or maybe that's not true. Maybe there's fun meetings. Okay, anyway, I like this. I think this will be fun. We can also try to bring in some light to bounce around off the tree and onto the moose and give him a nice crisp. Had a performance review. Ooh. Well, I hope you performed well. But yeah, maybe there's a little bit of a... like that. Some snowy light back here. Yeah, I think this will be fun. This is gonna be a fun painting. I might work on it off stream. I may not. I don't know. I might just do it on stream. But I think this is a good spot to call it for today. Try to save. I don't know if it'll let me. Yeah, it's letting me save. Great. Now we can close that. Yeah, this will be a fun card. I think it should be 4x6, although the more I look at it, the less I'm certain. Let's do something. Let's draw a line across my canvas. Copy it, paste it, rotate it. Does this look like 4? Like, is that 2/3? Yeah, that's 2/3. Perfect. Okay, that is 4x6. I was like, does this, without measuring, it's funny. This is that optical illusion that happens. You guys know what I'm talking about? Where like horizontal lines look longer than, or vertical. Wait, is it vertical looks longer than horizontal? I don't know. It's hard to tell. Like when you have a line that's horizontal, like this feels wider than this. Like these lines feel taller and this feels shorter. Whereas when I turn it this way, now it feels like the ratio feels like it's changed. I mean, obviously when I do it in front of you, it you know what I mean? Like, here, maybe I can show you better. This does not feel, these feel taller than they are when I put the images this way. These feel like they're at a different ratio. Like this feels taller relative to this. Whereas when it's this way, this feels extremely tall relative to this, right? Like this doesn't feel wide. This feels skinny and this feels extremely tall. But when I do it this way, this doesn't feel like short. Not really. It feels kind of like almost square. I don't know. It's a weird, like, it's a weird optical illusion for me. I don't know if everybody experiences that the same, but there's definitely like a height illusion where tall things feel taller for some reason. I don't fully understand it. I just know that it exists, and I constantly catch myself thinking like, oh, I gotta adjust the proportions. And then no, actually, it still is accurate. Anyway, that's my ramble. All right, thanks for being here, everybody. Is it because I'm watching it on the screen? No, I think it exists in real life too. I think it's a real life thing. I think. I don't know. Maybe it's a screen thing. I don't know. There's probably an explanation out there that I've seen at some point, but I'm not sure what it is. I know there's a famous optical illusion where like counting things spaced out is more accurate than counting things going up, like in height. There's something to do with like I don't know if it's like a tracking issue or I forget I think there's an explanation out there. I just can't remember what it is. But anyway, maybe I'll look it up after stream. But yeah, thanks for hanging out, everybody. I really appreciate you being here. I stream 3 days a week: Mondays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Next stream will be on Saturday. I may continue this and make it more Christmassy for my Christmas card, or maybe I will do something else. I'm not quite sure. But yeah, you can follow me on all the sites, Instagram, Twitch, YouTube. Everywhere is just JStiller30. I'm also on Patreon, patreon.com/JStiller30. Thank you for all the support. I really appreciate it. It means a lot. Thank you so much. You guys are amazing. See ya. Thank you for the follows and the raids and the